Chapter 55. Irina's need. Naruto and the others had fought against dragons like these before, but it looked like the ones arrayed against them now had been heavily modified. The 50-strong dragon army appeared stronger somehow. There was something about them that made Naruto wary, though neither he nor the others had time for concerns. Yura-san, activate your shield to protect our backs. Hold it for as long as you can. Gasper, activate your balance breaker and stop them in their tracks. Revel was still giving them orders as she assessed the situation. Yura reactivated her artificial sacred gear, a powerful shield that could cover nearly the entire length of this strange space. Several dragons slammed into the shield without relent. Yet even though Yura squeaked when they bashed and clawed against her shield, it still held. Gasper quickly consumed a bit of Issei's blood, and with the power of a dragon flowing through him, he activated his balance breaker, forbidden invade Balor the beast. Darkness engulfed the area around him. Gasper himself seemed to sink into the darkness. The darkness consumed him before a massive hand with claws that looked like they could tear through steel slammed into the ground. It was followed by what, at a glance, appeared to be a several-meter-tall monster with a dragon's head and wings protruding from its back. This was Gasper when he transformed, his trump card. Gasper didn't stop there as he began creating multiple twisted monsters to contend with the dragons. Nearly 20 monsters appeared and charged into the enemy lines under his command. This was one of Gasper's greatest strengths. His sacred gear gave him an advantage when battling multiple opponents because he could make up for his lack of numbers with his balance breaker. Of course, he still needed Issei's blood to give him a power boost. Aiz, Naruto, Saji, you three should charge in the middle. Kaneko, Tsubaki, and Lugaro will take the left. Irina, Benya, and Xenovia the right. The rest of us will provide support. Revel continued issuing orders. No one said anything as they let Revel direct their forces. It was clear that she knew what she was doing. The three strongest were going up the middle to break up the enemy formation, while a powerful group of three would attack either side in a pincer-like maneuver. Naruto had already activated Kurama's 10-tailed chakra shroud, which he would need if he wanted that extra boost in strength. It still had a time limit, which sucked balls, but he didn't have time to reverse summon Kurama. But rather than his normal Kurama mode combined with Rikudo Senin Moto, Naruto simply stuck with using Kurama's chakra, transforming his body into a miniature 10-tailed fox. The first thing he did as the massively powerful chakra created a life-sized transparent fox avatar around him was extended numerous chakra hands that touched his allies, revitalizing them, healing whatever wounds they had, and giving them temporary chakra cloaks. Those who were with him became shocked since this was something he hadn't revealed yet, but Naruto was already busy slamming head first into the first dragon. Naruto created small Bijudama in his right hand and smashed it into the face of a dragon, watching in grim satisfaction as the head exploded. He didn't stick around. Once the dragon was dead, Naruto crouched low, looking like a feral animal, and used his 10 tails as weapons to attack the dragons. Several tails speared his enemies with impunity. Another tail wrapped around a dragon's waist and squeezed, tearing the dragon in half. With a roar, Naruto created a Bijudama from his mouth and fired it at a dragon in front of him, blowing a hole clean through its chest. Be careful, Naruto. If you use too much power, this space will destabilize. I don't know what will happen, but I know it would be bad if you destroyed this place. In other words, stick primarily to taijutsu, got it? It had been a while since he could fight like this, but he understood that going all out inside of a space located within the dimensional gap was a bad idea. He might be able to survive thanks to Kurama. However, the others would most certainly perish. The dimensional gap was not a place someone could just enter without immense strength or prior preparation like how Arthur traveled using Caliburn. Since that was the case, Naruto stuck with pure melee combat. He used his arms, legs, and tails as weapons of war, wielding all 14 limbs with ease, sending dragons flying. These modified dragons were strong. He was certain they were stronger than the ones that attacked the underworld. However, compared to Nihage, these creatures were small fry. Naruto lost himself to the flow of battle. He slipped right. A dragon appeared before him. It attacked, he dodged, and his right arm went straight through its chest when he punched it. The cloying scent of blood became thick in the air as he removed his hand, allowing warm blood to gush from the creature, spill onto the floor with a splatter, and grow into an ever-expanding pool. He was already turning around as it fell face first to the ground. There was no telling how long Naruto and the others fought. He attacked and attacked and attacked, until he realized there was nothing more to attack. All the dragons lay slain on the ground, though the magician who had summoned them was nowhere to be seen. Thanks to Naruto's chakra cloak protecting them, no one had any serious injuries, and what wounds they did have healed quickly. Naruto sighed as he let Kurama's chakra go. Flinching as small aches appeared on his body. Using Kurama's chakra without also enhancing his own ability to withstand it by using Rikudo Senin Moto was a foolish idea. But he didn't want to destroy this battlefield by releasing too much power. It seems the battle is over. We weren't able to capture the mage responsible, but we learned a lot, enough that I think we should let the higher-ups know what transpired here. I'll be sure to write a report to the Four Mouths and Archangel Michael. Naruto and Akano. You two should write a report for Azazel-sensei when he comes back from visiting the vampires, Sona said, adjusting her glasses as Tsubaki moved to stand beside her, Naginata firmly grasped within her left hand. Great. Writing a report. That is just what I need, Naruto mumbled with a tired sigh. He walked over to Revel, who was standing beside Asia and Yura. He placed a hand on Revel's head and began rubbing her hair. You did a great job, Revel. Your strategy saved us. I didn't do much. Revel flushed under the praise and gave him a small smile. You probably could have taken on every dragon here by yourself. Probably, but I would have destroyed this entire dimension to do it, and then we'd all be in trouble. Naruto grinned at the girl. Don't undersell yourself. You were awesome. Thank you, Revel said with a slight stutter. You were pretty amazing too, Naruto Oni-san, Asia said with admiration sparkling in her eyes. That cloak thing you placed all of us in was incredible. It felt like my entire body and magic was being strengthened. I felt 10 times stronger and more energetic than normal. Yeah, Kurama's chakra is pretty amazing like that, Naruto agreed with a nod. When I touch people with Kurama's chakra, I can revitalize the life force of anyone I touch. This also heals their wounds. Even a life-threatening injury can be healed with Kurama's chakra because of the incredible vitality it contains. I am surprised you haven't used that ability before, Irina said as she wandered up to them with Zenovia, Kaneko, Issei, and Gasper, who had transformed back into his regular self. Naruto shook his head. I don't use it often because I can't control it very well. Ever since Kurama became the 10 Tails, his chakra has become far more powerful than a normal person can handle. Even though I am now a devil, the stress it places on my body is incredible. I normally have to combine Kurama's chakra with my own Rikudo Senin abilities just to withstand the pressure it places on my body, but when I do that, I cannot gift it to others. I see. Yes, that would explain why you haven't used it before, Irina said with a slow nod. You might be able to extend the time you use it if your base parameters are strengthened. You think so? Yes. If you gain powers comparable to someone like Searsex in your normal form without augmentations, you should have the strength to withstand my chakra. Guess I'll need to train harder then. Even if you can only use it for a limited amount of time, it's still very impressive, Zenovia said with an odd look on her face. I'm a bit depressed you didn't use this to battle against Cao Cao and his group. Had I known how strong you were in advance, well, never mind that. I'm not dissatisfied with my choice. Naruto had no idea what this woman was talking about, but he didn't care enough to find out. Under Sona's direction, their group left the space where they had battled. Sona sent Tsubaki on ahead to inform some of the 3 faction members stationed in Kuo City to come to the train station. When they arrived, she explained the situation to them and asked a specialist to help close the space the stray magicians were using, though not before removing the bodies of the now inert clones. Naruto took the clones. He placed them inside of a storage seal with the intention of giving them a proper funeral. It was almost sunrise by the time everything was over. While the rest of the team was exhausted, Naruto still felt completely energized, if a little sore. He stood over by the window as the others sat inside the train station. While not the kind of guy who often contemplated a lot, Naruto was currently in a contemplative mood. I need ramen. Well, he looked like he was in a contemplative mood, but the truth was he just wanted to eat some delicious ramen and was having trouble deciding on what kind he should consume. Should he go with the classic miso ramen, or should he maybe have some tonkatsu? He did enjoy the thick broth made from pork bones, fat, and collagen. So delicious. Oh, crap, he was drooling. Naruto-sama. Revel's reflection appeared within the window. Naruto wiped the drool from his mouth before turning to look at the girl. Revel. What's up? Did you need something? I was wondering if you could help me. Revel made her request with a hint of hesitation. Help you with what? Asked Naruto. With the people who are creating fake phoenix tears. Revel's lips trembled, but her eyes were hard as she stared at him. I cannot forgive those people for what they did. They cloned members of the House of Phoenix, trapped those clones within tanks, and forced them to produce tears. It's unforgivable. So I want you to help me. Put a stop to this, please. Naruto studied the girl for a few moments. She looked like she was very worried that he wouldn't be interested in helping her. He sighed, walked up, and pulled her into a warm hug. Since she was so short, her head barely coming up to his chest, he was able to place his chin on the crown of her head. Of course I'll help you. I'm your king, after all. But more importantly, I am your fiancé, right? Whatever you need help with, I'll definitely give it my all. Thank you. As Naruto held onto Revel, who pressed her face against his chest, he thought back on what they had seen and what he needed to do. Discovering the location of the factory that produced fake phoenix tears was going to be hard. It sounded like there might even be multiple factories since the one they had gone to had been in the process of getting shut down. He'd probably need to contact Aniki and let him know about this. To make matters worse, Naruto had not heard from Rias, Kiba, or Azazel since they left for vampire territory. He knew they might be busy, but he wished they would contact him so he would know they were okay. Maybe it was just the result of what happened with these stray magicians. However, Naruto had a bad feeling that something may have happened to them. Devil Ninja. A few days passed since the incident with the stray magicians. Life returned to normal, save for the fact that Kiba and Rias still hadn't returned from the vampires' territory. While Naruto never expressed his worry to anyone, the others noticed that he became more absent-minded as time went on. He'd be caught spacing out when he should have been working on paperwork, would sometimes trip or bump into things despite not being very clumsy, and had been sighing so much everyone in the house was worried he would breathe out all his happiness. Among those worried for Naruto, Irina was perhaps the most worried. Call it her nature as an angel. I want to help Naruto get his mind off his problems, or I want to at least help him settle down. That was why she had gone to Xenovia and Asia for help. The two girls were Irina's best friends now, people she spent nearly every day with, and the students at Kuo Academy had even begun calling them the church trio because of how religious they acted. It was lunchtime at school, and like always, Irina had traveled to Asia and Xenovia's classroom so they could eat lunch together. All of them were chowing down on the boxed lunches Akano had made for them. It was filled with furikake rice, sliced omelet, an assortment of vegetables, and wieners. That woman knew how to make a mean bento. Is Naruto having a problem? Asked Xenovia right before she stuffed a wiener shaped like an octopus into her mouth. Before coming to Japan, none of these girls had known people could cut wieners that make this shape. She popped another wiener into her mouth and spoke before swallowing. He seems fine to me. He's probably just thinking about Rias. I think it's gone beyond merely thinking about Rias, Irina muttered. She didn't mean to sound so bitter, but she also couldn't stop from wondering if Naruto would be this worried about her were she to disappear. I agree with Irina, Asia said quietly. She was already finished eating, but her portions had been much smaller than theirs since she didn't eat as much. Staring into her cup of steaming hot tea, she furrowed her brow and presented the two with a sorrowful look. I've known Naruto almost as long as I've known eyes. He is almost always upbeat and cheerful. In all the time I've known him, he's never looked so upset before. It's gotten so bad that Kaneko even. Asia stopped talking and blushed bright red, which caused Irina and Xenovia to become curious and stare at the girl. Waiting for her to continue, she did not. Anyway, Naruto is definitely feeling a lot of stress and worry, Asia concluded. Hold on. Xenovia raised a hand to forestall the conversation from going further. What did Kaneko do? I'm curious. Me too. Irina leaned forward eagerly. Kaneko Taju was the person who got the most affection from Naruto after Rias Gremory, and Irina knew the girl had been taking advantage of Rias's absence to steal his free time. She was jealous. No, that wasn't right. She was not jealous. Irina was just worried that Naruto wouldn't have time for anything else if he spent it all with Kaneko. That was all. Well, Asia's cheeks became an even brighter shade of red. She looked around as though seeking an escape route. but Irina and Zenobia had no intention of giving her one. Finally, she relented. She was, writing on his thingy. She what? Irina and Zenobia shouted in shock. Their voices were so loud that the other people in the classroom stopped talking and turned to stare at them. Irina became keenly aware of the eyes on them, so she coughed into her hand and tried to make herself smaller. Shouting so loudly like that was embarrassing. It was even more shameful considering the topic they were now discussing. Asia nodded once. Her cheeks were already so dark they could not have become darker. I went into the office Naruto Oni-san has been using for work, and I found Kaneko hiding under the table. She was writing, "Property of Kaneko," in marker on his thingy, Asia muttered, unable to call the boys' private parts by their real name. I didn't know she was doing that, Irina said with a frown. I hope she didn't use permanent marker. I'm sure she wouldn't do that, Asia assured her. Is writing on someone's privates with marker something all couples do? Asked Zenobia. Then she paused as a very serious expression crossed her face. Should I write on Isa's dick? Absolutely not, Asia shouted. Don't you dare even think about writing on Isa's wiener. Once again, the shout was so loud that everyone turned to stare at them. This time, unfortunately, Asia had said something that the other students couldn't ignore. Are they talking about privates? OMG. The church trio is discussing someone's junk. And Asia said Issei. Is she talking about Hyodo? Gross. Hey, Asia. Why are you talking about my man bits like that? Issei shouted from where he was sitting with his two friends, Matsuda and Motohama. No, it's not. Asia tried to say something, but considering what she just shouted out, was it any wonder she couldn't find the words? Oh ho ho. What's this? Is the infamously chaste church trio interested in learning about dingleberries? Another person asked. She was a girl in their class. Ika Kiryu was a bespectacled girl with a nature that was every bit as perverted as the so-called perverted trio composed of Issei, Matsuda, and Motohama. Asia still thought she was really nice, but she had learned months ago not to trust what Kiryu said because all of her advice was super lewd. That isn't what we are talking about. Asia tried to deny it. Kiryu was having none of that. Now, it's totally alright. I understand you three are young and curious. Allow this humble Oni-sama to give you some advice. As Kiryu tried to offer Irina, Asia, and Zenobia advice they really didn't need, Issei and his two friends came over to them. Hey, stop filling their heads with your weird ideas. Huh? Weird? The only weird one here is you. You're a full-time pervert who's been dipping your kielbasa into various sauces. And yet you are worried about me corrupting these girls? Police. How did you even know about that? It's obvious to anyone who knows you. Kiryu paused. And Asia told me about the first time you two had sex. Asia, I am sorry. Kiryu found out because I was glowing. She said I looked like a maiden who'd just been thoroughly foo. Don't say it, Asia, it's okay. I understand that witch is the one who is to blame. Please don't say anymore. Eyes, you still have not fucked me. You stay out of this, Zenobia. Irina felt like a fifth wheel now as she watched Kiryu string along Asia and Issei, with Zenobia adding her own unnecessary commentary. She felt a little lonely being the only one not part of this relationship. Yet just as she began thinking that, an image of Naruto telling her that he loved her entered her mind, and she began feeling better. While she still felt some resistance toward their relationship, Naruto had done everything he could to make her feel secure and comfortable. But right now, Naruto was hurting. Maybe Zenobia didn't notice because she wasn't interested, but Irina had been watching him for a while now, so she knew how he felt. Lunch ended and Irina went back to her own classroom, the one she shared with Naruto and Kiba. Kiba was not present right now because he was with Rias Gremory, but Naruto was sitting in his usual seat, spacing out as usual. She slid into her seat across from Naruto and found herself watching him. Naruto didn't seem to be paying attention to anything. His eyes were blank as their math teacher lectured them about geometry congruence. He didn't seem to even hear the math teacher's lecture, though she could see his hand moving as if he was really taking notes. She bit her lip. It really was worrying her to see him like this. Throughout the whole day, Irina could not stop thinking about Naruto. She couldn't get over her worry for him. That was why she had decided to speak with someone who she believed might be able to help her. After school ended, Irina went off on her own and called up her boss. Hello? Hi, Griselda. Now this is a surprise. I do believe this is the first time you have called me of your own volition. I am sorry about that. Since Irina didn't want anyone overhearing this conversation, she was careful to find a place where very few people traveled, behind the old school building. While the Occult Research Club used the old school building as their clubroom, no one ever traveled behind it. There was no reason to. Irina was pacing the length of the wall as she called her frightening boss. While she was not as afraid of Griselda as Zenobia, who was utterly terrified of the older woman, she still felt a thrill of fear when they spoke. There was just something about Gabriel's queen that made her feel like her every action was being scrutinized. Well, it is fine. May I ask what you are calling me for? I cannot imagine you called me without a reason. Ah ha ha, yeah, I did call you for a reason. I need your help with something. Since Irina had nothing to lose, she laid all her thoughts and worries on the table, telling Griselda about how Naruto had been acting since Rias disappeared, and how she wanted to help him but didn't know how. She made sure to leave nothing out. By the time she finished, a long silence ensued as the woman on the other line absorbed the knowledge before speaking. So you really are dating Naruto Uzumaki? I assumed as much when I saw how you acted around him. I honestly thought you would have begun dating Issei Hyodo since you were in love with him, but I guess people fall in and out of love all the time. Irina had never mentioned to her teacher and boss that she was dating Naruto, but it was probably obvious to anyone associated with her. There had been a very obvious shift in her actions and emotions lately. So no, she was not surprised that Griselda had figured her out. It was still embarrassing though. I want to help him, but I don't know how, and so you came to me for advice. You do realize that my own experience with relationships is severely lacking, correct? I know that, but I couldn't think of who else to turn to. Please, you might be the only person who can help me. Okay. Give me a moment to think about this. You wish to help Naruto settle down and stop stressing out about Rias Gremory, but you don't know what to do because this is something you have never done before. That's right. The other side went dead for a long moment, and Irina wondered if the line had been disconnected, but then Griselda spoke up again. I think this issue will be fairly easy to resolve. Men are simple creatures. They're easy to distract. Here's what you will do. Take Naruto out on a date. I said it. Irina didn't know why she felt so disappointed, but perhaps she had been expecting something more comprehensive. Just telling her to take Naruto on a date was not the advice she had been looking for. She wanted something more specific. No, that is not it. Listen, if you were a human girl, I would normally suggest offering him something more, but you are an angel. If you and Naruto had sex right now, you would fall. We can't have that. The words coming from her teacher shocked Irina. She would have suggested having sex with Naruto if she was human? Really? The church had some very strict policies regarding sex. It wasn't forbidden, but it was something done between a man and a woman who had been married under God. Of course, Irina understood that many rules regarding sexual relations had been relaxed since the founding of the church. The simple fact was very few people subscribed to this belief that people needed to have sex before marriage. Still, hearing Griselda say something like this was a shocker. Then what should I do? Asked Irina, getting over her surprise to ask the most important question here. Since you cannot offer him your body, here is what you are going to do instead. Irina listened with a serious expression and even more serious blush as Griselda laid out Irina's plan of attack. She would help Naruto conquer his sorrow, even if doing so made her feel embarrassed. Devil Ninja. Let's go on a date. Naruto had been working on the paperwork that was normally Rias's job when she was in town when Irina barged into his office and blurted out those words. He stared at the girl who would normally never say that with shock written plain as day on his face. In return, Irina's cheeks burned with a savage fierceness. Yet even though she was clearly embarrassed, her gaze did not waver. What I mean is, you have been working really hard because of Rias's absence, and I think you could use a break, so. Okay, Naruto said simply, interrupting Irina. Oh okay? Irina asked like she didn't understand at first. Naruto grinned. Let's go on a date. Ah, right, yes. Let's do that. What day should we go on our date? Do you think the weekend would be best? Where should we go? Naruto, what do you think we should do? Irina asked, her voice containing an odd combination of excitement and nervousness. Now that Naruto was thinking about it, he and Irina didn't really do that much together. Certainly, he didn't do anywhere near as much with Irina as he did with the others. Kaneko, Ravel, Rias, Roswise, and Ophis got far more of his time than this girl. He wondered if that was because the others were so much more demanding. Irina was quiet and unobtrusive, almost like she was worried about taking up too much of his time. "I think Saturday would work," Naruto said. "We can plan our date for early afternoon. As for what we can do." Naruto had Irina come around to his side of the desk as he turned on the laptop. He didn't use computers often because he wasn't used to them, but he at least knew how to make them work. Rias had taught him. The first thing he did was pull up a map of Kuo City and a search engine, which he used to run a quick search on any fun activities that were happening that weekend. Irina placed a hand on his shoulder as she leaned over to look at the screen. He wondered if she was even aware of what she was doing. "It looks like there's a concert. I'm not so good with loud noises." What about, it looks like there's going to be a no-play performed this weekend at the Crimson Lord Resort." Naruto paused when he saw the name of the resort. "Isn't this one of the many businesses owned by the Gremory family?" "A no-play, huh?" Irina muttered with an intrigued look. "It is true that I haven't seen any no-plays in a really long time. My family took me to a few of them, but we're all Christians, and no-plays are often based on traditional literature involving supernatural beings transforming into humans." "Is that a no?" Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head. Irina smiled. "While it doesn't exactly mesh with traditional Christian aesthetics, I have always enjoyed seeing stuff like this. No plays are the oldest form of theater art that's still regularly performed in this day and age, you know. Besides, with the new alliance between the angels, devils, and fallen angels, I don't think there is anything wrong with experiencing this kind of culture. Besides," she giggled, "we already experienced similar culture during our trip to Kyoto." "True. Okay then, let's see a no-play." Naruto nodded and typed away at the laptop, placing a reservation for the Crimson Lord Resort and buying tickets to see the no-play with Irina. The no-play wasn't until later at night, which meant they would still have half a day left to themselves. Naruto decided that before they went to the resort, he and Irina would just enjoy a day of wandering the town together and window shopping. After all, didn't most girls enjoy shopping? Devil Ninja. Because the date wouldn't begin until early in the afternoon, Naruto spent most of that time with Rosweiss in the library. His mansion had an extensive library filled with books related to all kinds of subjects. Of course, there were the subjects on magic, demonology, and the various mythologies around the world, but there were also fiction books, non-fiction, self-help, and a variety of books that taught numerous subjects. Naruto did notice there was a rather large amount of chess books located in one corner of the room. Those belonged to Rias. Naruto really did not like reading. He got tired when he stared at pages filled with nothing but letters. However, Rosweiss was there to help him overcome this difficulty. She was like a stern teacher. Oh, wait. She actually was his teacher. Now that he thought about it, dating his teacher was kinda hot, wasn't it? He wondered if he could convince her to have sex in the classroom after school. "It's almost time for your date. You should get ready," Rosweiss said after looking at the clock. "Right." Naruto stood up, leaned over to kiss Rosweiss on the cheek, and said, "Thanks for keeping me company." "Ah, yes. Well, you're welcome," Rosweiss said, smiling at him. Since Naruto didn't want to go on his date without freshening up, he first took a quick shower instead of a long bath. Then he went back to his room and got dressed. Since it was a date, he didn't want to wear his normal outfits. After rummaging through his drawer, he found something he believed was suitable. He slid on his black pants, an orange undershirt, and a black collared shirt that he left unbuttoned. After all, it would have been a shame if no one could see the orange. After saying goodbye to everyone he passed on the way to the entrance, Naruto saw himself out. "Let's see. Irina said she wanted to meet me in Kuo City's town square," Naruto muttered to himself. Town square was basically a plaza, a sprawling mixture of offices, restaurants, entertainment centers, a theater, and several resorts. There were already hundreds of people when Naruto arrived. The massive throng of humanity made it difficult for Naruto to reach the designated area where he and Irina were supposed to meet, which was a small bridge that traveled over a thoroughfare. Irina was already there when he arrived. He paused for a moment, more than a little stunned when he saw how she was dressed. A white shirt without shoulders covered her torso, meaning her slender shoulders and collarbone were visible. The lines of her collarbone drew attention to her elegant neckline. Perhaps it was because of her shoulderless ensemble that he realized she had a very pretty collarbone. She wore black pants, a belt, and slip-on shoes with very small heels. All in all, she presented a fashionable image. He wondered who had a hand in arranging her outfit. "Irina," Naruto said as he walked over, "you look good." Irina wore an embarrassed but pleased smile as she spun around for him. "Thanks, I've never gotten dressed up like this, so I had some help." "Revel? She is surprisingly good at matching clothes." "That she is. Should we head off?" Naruto held out his hand. "Yes." Irina took it and let Naruto lead her off the bridge and toward the busy streets. "You came early," Naruto said as they wandered through the streets, mixing in with the flow of traffic. "Yeah, I was a little excited," Irina admitted. "I kept looking at the clock to see when I should leave, but it felt like time was moving too slow, so I just left." It had been decided by Irina that they would not leave from the house together and instead meet up after reaching Kuo Town Square. Naruto thought it was odd. Why bother meeting up when they both lived in the same place? He didn't understand, and since he didn't get it, he decided to ask Irina why they had done things this way. Because that's how dates are supposed to start. Her answer surprised him. It is. She had such a serious look on her face that Naruto couldn't find it in himself to dispute her, and indeed, this did seem to be the standard for dating, at least according to anime and manga. Every date in anime seemed to begin with the guy and girl meeting up. The guy would show up early, while the girl would arrive late and apologize. Meanwhile, the guy would say how he just got there, and then compliment the girl on his looks. He guessed Irina was just trying to stick to the tropes. Since their first decision was to simply wander around until it was time for the no play to begin, they walked up to several stores, window shopping until Irina found something she was interested in. Most of the stores they went into were novelty shops. It seemed Irina was mostly interested in looking at cute novelty items like the coin-stealing cat, which was actually a really ingenious piggy bank. You put a coin on a platform, and then a cat lifted the lid to the box, swiped the coin, and went back inside. Now that he was thinking on it, one of the things Irina had really been taken in with during the trip to Japan were the cute items found at souvenir shops. "Ah, check this out, Naruto, aren't these animal rings cute?" Another thing Irina had found while searching one shop were rings that looked like animals. There was one that looked like a sloth hugging your finger, others that looked like seals, and there was even a porcupine. What about these squishy faces? On the other hand, Naruto had found human face anti-stress balls. They were fat faces with several different expressions. When you squished or stretched them, they would look even more deformed than they already were. They didn't want to buy too many items. On the other hand, Naruto felt they should get something to commemorate their date, so he bought a matching pair of charms and a Hello Kitty stress ball. Because of how long they spent wandering in and out of stores, they ended up eating a late lunch, but neither of them minded. They had lunch at an outdoor cafe. Naruto ended up getting a simple sandwich, but Irina decided to try out a matcha parfait, which was a parfait that used green tea as its main flavor and had mochi balls inside. "It's been a really long time since I walked so much," Irina said as she stretched her legs underneath the table. Her calves brushed against his, which caused her to retract them with an embarrassed smile. "Everyone has been pretty busy, so none of us have had time to go out like this," Naruto agreed. "HMPH. You go out with Revel and Kaneko a lot. I also see you going out with Roswise quite often. And you go on dates with Rias almost every weekend." Irina sent Naruto an accusing glare as she pointed out all the times he went out, making him look away. It was true. He did do all those things with the others. That did make him feel a little guilty, especially since he was the one who had confessed to Irina, yet they had not really acted like a couple. "We should go out more then," he decided out loud. "We definitely should," Irina agreed. They spoke for nearly an hour at that cafe, content to simply relax. Then it was off to the Crimson Lord Resort. It was perhaps expected of a resort owned by the House of Gremory, but the Crimson Lord Resort was a massive building that made Naruto think of a palace. It was at least 20 stories tall, featured architecture more in line with European castles, and had the most refined decorations money could buy. Even the floor of the lobby was extravagant. The tiles had been designed into a painting depicting a foxwoman dressed in a crimson kimono. "Welcome, honored guests. How may I help you?" asked the clerk manning the front desk. "We have reservations for the no play that's playing in the amphitheater," Naruto said. "You should find our name under Naruto Uzumaki." The desk had a laptop sitting on it, and the clerk typed on the keyboard as he pulled up the reservations list for the no play. Uzumaki. Uzumaki. "Ah, here you are. Please take these tickets and travel straight down that hall. The amphitheater will be the large double doors on the right." I recommend entering through door A, those are the closest to your seats. Thank you. Naruto took the tickets from the clerk's hand and led Irina down the hall toward the door in question. Door A was, indeed, a fairly large double door. The doors were opened, exposing the amphitheater, which he realized was even bigger than he initially assumed upon entering. It had at least 200 rows of seats. It seemed a little extravagant for a no play, but he understood the Gremory family enjoyed being ostentatious. It was a common devil trait. Their seat was in the middle row. A good portion of the seats were already filled by the time they arrived, and Naruto couldn't help but notice that most of the patrons were dressed luxuriously. Fine silk dresses. Suits with extensive embroidery. Beautiful kimonos. Everyone looked like a high-class member of society. It appeared this play catered primarily to the wealthy. I feel a little underdressed, Irina admitted as they sat down. Me too, Naruto said with an uneasy chuckle. Because they didn't want to disturb anyone, they leaned in close and spoke in hushed tones. It wasn't until Naruto heard a gasp that he turned his head to fully face Irina. That was when he noticed how close they had gotten. Irina's face was just a few centimeters from his own. Her lips so close he only needed to lean down a bit more. The thought of doing so was tempting. In fact, as Irina closed her eyes, Naruto was unaware that he was closing the distance between their lips. Unfortunately, that was when the play started, interrupting the pair. They jerked away from each other and, with matching expressions of dismay, looked toward the stage so they could watch the play. Devil Ninja, that was fun. The no play was oddly interesting. I honestly didn't expect to like it as much as I did. Naruto and Irina emerged from the amphitheater where the no play had taken place. This particular play was a Mugen no, a play that involved supernatural worlds, featured gods, spirits, ghosts, and phantasms in the role of the hero. The no play they had watched was about a god who was cast out of heaven for the crime of assaulting Amaterasu. Most of the first half involved the hero raging against the gods and threatening revenge, but then he had a change of heart after falling in love with a human woman. That ending was so tragic though. Irina sniffled as she wiped her eyes. The hero fell in love, only to be forced back to heaven after heroically sacrificing himself for the woman he fell for. I wish they could have stayed together. I've noticed that a lot of Japanese stories like this tend to end tragically, Naruto muttered. Why is that? I think it's because Japan believes in aesthetic endings that are beautiful, Irina said with a tilt of her head. Beautiful? What is beautiful about the person you love dying? Asked Naruto. I think it's in the intentions. Irina gripped his hand as he led her into the lobby. Her hands were very soft and warm. By contrast, Naruto felt like his hand was sweaty and gross. I remember when I was younger and still living in Japan, our class read a story called The Flower Wife. It's about a young man and woman who got married. One morning, after coming home from a mountain, the young husband wanted to show his wife a beautiful evening primrose he cut while traveling home, but he discovers that his wife had collapsed in the kitchen. She tells him that she is the spirit of the primrose, that she fell in love with his voice and transformed into a human to marry him. She thanks him for giving her happiness before dying. So, the husband killed the wife without knowing it? Naruto asked. Yes. And that is beautiful. Irina wore a strained smile. I sort of understand how you feel. To me, it feels kind of like an injustice. Why can't the man and his wife be happy together? But I moved away from Japan when I was younger and lived in Europe for the last half of my life. That's why, Naruto. Yes? Naruto asked as he walked up to the front desk, where the same young man from before was standing. Are we not going home? I thought we could spend the night here. Spend the— Wait, what? Excuse me, Naruto said to the clerk manning the front desk. Can we get one room for the night? Naruto reached into a pocket, removed his wallet, and pulled out a golden card, which he showed to the clerk. The man's eyes went wide when he saw the card. Oh, of course, good sir. No, of course, my lord. We can definitely accommodate you. In fact, the king's suite is currently available if you'd like. We'll take that room. Thank you. Not at all. Not at all. Naruto had never used this card before, which had been given to him by his Aniki, but now that he knew what kind of reception he could get if he used it, he planned to take full advantage. The idea of traveling around to all the resorts owned by the House of Gremory and getting to stay in their VIP suites for free sounded pleasant. Yes. He would definitely do this at some point. Once he was given the keys to the suite, Naruto led the shell-shocked Irina by the hand. The king's suite was on the top floor. It was basically the penthouse suite. As they entered an elevator, Naruto pressed the button for the top floor, and stepped back as the lift silently rose. That was when Irina finally got over her shock. And Naruto, wait a minute please. What is it? This is, how do I say it? I mean, it's not that I don't want to spend the night with you or anything, but, as Angel, I can't do, that with you, so. Naruto tilted his head as he looked at the girl in confusion, but it cleared up a moment later and he smiled. Do you think I decided to spend the night here so we can have sex? Is that not why we are here? Asked Irina carefully. Naruto shook his head but didn't say anything as the elevator door opened. He led her into the hall and up to the only door at the end. Like most doors these days, this one could only be opened with a keycard, which Naruto slid through the card reader. A soft beep followed by a click echoed around them. Naruto twisted the handle, pushed the door open, and led the girl next to him inside. The king's suite truly was a place fit for a king. Soft carpet spread across the spacious interior, which reminded him more of an apartment than a hotel room. He and Irina were currently standing at the entrance, which opened into a living room and kitchen that was bigger than his entire apartment from before Rias renovated it into the mansion it had become. The furniture was also top quality. I know you can't have sex with a devil, Naruto finally said as he walked further into the suite. He turned around to look at Irina, still standing in the doorway with a dumb look on her face. You'll fall if you have sex with me, right? I understand how important being an angel is for you, so I would never let you fall. Then why are we here? Asked Irina. Naruto shrugged. I just want to spend time with you. When we are at home, I have to divide my time so I'm not neglecting anyone. I can't spend all my time with just one person, and I feel like you often get the short end of the stick. Figured this would help make up for neglecting you for the others. Ever since he began his polyamorous relationships, Naruto had been having issues juggling the amount of time he spent with everyone. Rias often got to spend more time with him than anyone. After her was Kaneko, who made her desire to be with him known every chance she got, followed by Ravel and Ophis. Rosweiss and Irina were the two he didn't spend much time with. And between the two, he spent less time with Irina than he did Rosweiss. Irina stared at him for such a long time that Naruto wondered if maybe she'd been frozen. Then she looked away. He noticed her ears were a little red. That's very sweet of you, she said at last, her voice soft. Well, I don't really know what to say, except, thank you. Why are you thanking me? Asked Naruto. For being like this, I guess. For treating me like this. Irina gripped her clothes with trembling hands as she forced herself to look at him. The truth is, I have been wondering if I made the right choice when I decided to date you instead of continue going after eyes. The reason I didn't ever try to get close to you was because I felt guilty. Because you still have feelings for Issei? Naruto asked. Irina nodded. Yes. Even after we began dating, a part of me still liked Issei. Because of that, I felt very guilty, like I wasn't being a proper girlfriend to you. I didn't feel like I could show you as much affection as the others. The way Rias, Ravel, Kaneko, and Ophis act toward you is something I didn't feel like I could do. After taking a deep breath, Irina looked at him with determination in her eyes. But after this, I think I can really fall in love with you. You're not just my second choice anymore. I'm not dating you because I didn't feel like I could date eyes. I'm dating you because I want to date you. Naruto walked over to Irina and embraced the girl. He pulled her tight to his chest, placed his chin on her head, and enjoyed the feel of her. Maybe he was imagining things, but he felt like he could hear her heart hammering in her chest. I'm glad you feel this way, Naruto admitted. Naruto. To be honest, I've been feeling pretty guilty too, he confessed. I guess, I didn't feel like I was giving you the love you deserve, that I wasn't paying enough attention to you. That's probably why I haven't spent as much time with you. Irina giggled. So you felt this way too. I guess we were both being kind of silly. Seems that way. Naruto hugged Irina for a bit longer before stepping away. In any case, why don't I make you some dinner? You can cook? Irina asked in surprise. That's rude. Of course I can cook. How do you think I survived before we all began living together? I thought you survived off ramen. Despite standing in place, Naruto tripped over something and slammed face first into the floor. He quickly leapt back to his feet, rubbed his now sore face, and frowned at the girl, who had the decency to look sheepish. Well, I guess you're not completely wrong. Naruto did survive mostly on ramen, but even he knew you couldn't eat ramen all the time. Anyway, I'll make you some dinner. Can I help? Asked Irina. Sure. While Naruto didn't have much time for it anymore because he was busy with work as a high-class devil, he still used to spend a lot of time helping Revel cook. He knew at least enough to make some decent meals. Revel primarily specialized in baking sweets. She excelled at European confectionaries, but that didn't mean it was all she could cook, and thanks to her expanding her own repertoire of dishes, Naruto's own cooking had increased. He still only knew how to make mostly European foods. However, he did know a bit about Japanese cooking. Since it was pretty late, Naruto decided to make yakiniku. It was just grilled meat. There was fortunately plenty of food in the fridge and plenty of seasonings in the pantry. There was some sliced beef in the fridge, so he used that and mixed it with the basic sauce he made. This kitchen did not have a grill, so he used a frying pan instead. It only took a few minutes to grill up the meat. He also sliced some vegetables and brought out a bottle of sake. Meanwhile, Irina set the table. You realize we're not old enough to drink, right? Irina said with a bemused frown. Maybe not by Japan's laws, but where I come from, the moment someone becomes a ninja, they are an adult. Finished cooking the beef, Naruto placed it and the vegetables on a tray, which we brought to the table. Back when I was younger, my sensei took me to numerous bars across the elemental nations and had me try all kinds of alcohol with him. I guess you could say I acquired a taste for it. Besides, we aren't going to drink much. Just a single cup should be fine, right? Don't Christians drink a glass of wine to honor God? Well, I guess. That's the spirit. Naruto and Irina sat down for dinner, and Naruto poured Irina a single saucer of sake. The food was good. Not great, but Naruto had to pat himself on the back for cooking something, even if it was very basic. After dinner, Naruto and Irina washed the dishes together. So, what do we do now? Asked Irina. Well, there is a perfectly good bed in the other room, Naruto said with a grin. Naruto, we're not going to have sex. We're going to cuddle and sleep. Oh, I guess that is okay. The bedroom was almost the same size as the living room. Naruto was getting used to unnecessarily large rooms, however, and so he didn't let that bother him. Like the room, the bed was unnecessarily big. It was bigger than a king-sized bed. He didn't know what size you could even call it. Emperor? God? It was ridiculous. White sheets spread across the bed to present a clean and neat aesthetic. He and Irina were still in their clothes from the date, but there were pajamas set out for them. All the outfits were on the racy side. Irina had no choice but to wear semi-transparent lingerie that just barely hid her breasts. On the other hand, Naruto just put on a pair of black pajama pants and went without a shirt. Naruto would admit if only to himself that Irina looked stunning in lingerie. Because it was partially see-through, her beautiful nipples were visible through the fabric. She wore simple white panties. While her undergarments were not anything special, the wonderful curvature of her hip drew his eyes to the delicate lines of her body. Irina had wide hips, a slim waist, and a bust that would not lose out to the best of them. Since Irina was hesitant, Naruto understood that he was the one who needed to take charge here, and thus he pulled the girl onto the bed with him. She squawked as her head fell onto his chest. However, she settled down after they were both comfortable. Hey, Naruto? Yeah? I thought I'd let you know, I'm going to try and find a way we can, a way we can do it without me falling. Naruto understood what she meant without her having to full out say it. Does that mean you want to have sex? Well, of course I'm curious and it's not fair that everyone else can do it, but I can't. Irina tried to justify herself. He laughed, which caused her to pout at him. But they both settled down and Irina began speaking in a softer voice. I want to connect with you on a deeper level, so of course I want to do that with you. Thank you, Naruto said. I want to connect with you too. I'm glad. Really glad. Me too, Naruto. Yeah? Thank you for being so patient with me. Irina looked up at him. I know we haven't really acted like much of a couple until now, but I want you to know I appreciate you a lot. I should be the one saying that. Naruto reached up and caressed Irina's cheek. Thank you for being with me despite how difficult I am. Irina tilted her head and leaned up as Naruto leaned down. As their lips pressed together, Naruto decided that he was also going to work hard so they could eventually take that final step. Devil Ninja. The early morning sun was rising behind the steel frames of Kuo City as Naruto and Irina sat on the bus that would take them home. A soft weight rested against his shoulder, Irina, who had her eyes closed and wore a content smile on her face. She'd been like this ever since they woke up. It was like a weight she had been bearing for all this time without her knowledge had finally been lifted from her shoulders. On a side note, both of them had still been wearing clothes upon waking up. It felt a bit odd to Naruto, who was so used to having sex, but that was neither here nor there. "Looks like this is our stop," Naruto murmured to let Irina know they were about to get off. "Are we already there?" Irina lifted her head from his shoulder, looked outside the window, and pouted as she realized that, yes, they had reached their stop. "I was hoping for a little more time with you." "I'll be sure to spend a lot more time with you from now on," Naruto assured her. "You'd better keep that promise," Irina said. After they stood up and exited the bus, Naruto glanced around. This area was mostly a cul-de-sac. There was a park across the street, where he could see a couple of older people walking their dogs. It was still early morning, so nobody was outside yet. Naruto was certain plenty of kids would come once the hour grew late. It only took a few minutes to reach their mansion. No one came to greet them when they entered the entrance hall, slipped off their shoes, and set them on the rack. "We're home," Naruto announced. While he didn't expect someone to greet them upon first entering, he did frown when no one responded. Could it be that everyone was busy? This was a big house, so perhaps they were just somewhere deeper inside? He shrugged and was about to march into the living room with Irina, when a loud crash followed by a cat-like laugh echoed from the door. "Nya ha ha ha. We have no need for clothes, Valley, let's remove them now." Someone stop her. Damn it, who the hell brought out the catnip? "Nya, you smell so good, chicken wings." "My name isn't Chicken Wings. Why are you calling me that? Also, let go of me now. Valley, make a baby with me. Kuroka, stop being a pest. And you, stop laughing. This is all your fault, you know." "Huh?" Naruto blinked several times as the familiar voices reached him. "It sounds like Team Valley is here." Naruto opened the door and stepped inside to find something that looked like it had come from the most atrocious porno director in the entire world. Madness was the only word he could think of to describe the scene playing out before him. Kaneko was but one and rubbing against Ravel, who was equally one. While the Nekosho's clothes were nowhere to be found, the scraps remaining from Ravel's lay discarded on the floor beside her. Naruto had a pretty good idea as to what happened there. A little ways from Kaneko was Valley, Kuroka, Lefei, Arthur, Biku, and Fenrir. Valley was lying on the ground and struggling to get a one Kuroka off him. He was pushing and shoving to no avail. Meanwhile, Biku was chortling as he gleefully watched Kuroka attempt to rip off the boy's pants. "Stop laughing and give me a hand," Valley shouted. "I think you have this situation well under control, White Dragon," Biku said with mirth clear in his eyes and voice. Even if I wanted to, I don't have the strength to stop Kuroka," Lefei added. Arthur pushed his glasses up his nose. "I'd rather not get involved." Woof. Damn all of you, Team Valley, Ravel, and Kaneko were not the only ones in the room. Watching this scene play out was Rainier, Asia, and Issei. Sort of. Issei was not able to see anything because Asia and Rainier were covering his eyes. "No, you can't look, eyes. I refuse to let you. If you even think of peeking at these girls, I will gouge out your eyes." "I'm not looking, I promise, though he said that, Issei's nose was bleeding so profusely it looked like flowing magma. He'd clearly gotten a peek of what was happening just a little before the two girls blinded him. "So, can someone please tell me what's going on?" Naruto asked of no one in particular. The moment his voice rang out, Kaneko and Kuroka stopped attempting to molest Ravel and Valley respectively and turned to him at the same time. A shiver ran down Naruto's spine when he saw the looks in their eyes. The hunger? Or was that thirst? He couldn't remember, but he was certain he'd once seen a meme about thirsty thoughts, and while he'd never called these two something so crass, the words did float through his mind at that moment. Then again, it could have been his mind attempting to disassociate itself from his impending doom. "This looks bad," Irina murmured. "Yeah, anyway, Irina? What? I'm leaving this to you. Oh, okay. Huh?" Seconds before Irina could fully comprehend what he said, Naruto bolted back out the door and began racing down the hall. He did not know what happened after that, but a shrill scream followed by two catgirls laughing, "Nya ha ha ha," echoed from the room behind him. "Devil Ninja, The issue regarding Kaneko and Kuroka eventually ended when the effects of the catnip ran out, and Naruto returned and sat beside an upset Irina as the situation was explained to him. Apparently, Asia and Ravel had been preparing tea for our guests. Asia had asked Issei to help her get out the cream, sugar, and creamer, but he had apparently grabbed catnip as well because it was right next to the creamer and didn't have a label. Yes, their mansion had catnip. Kuroka had brought some over on her last trip here when she was training Kaneko. It was like LSD for cats and Nekusho, too. Apparently, it also had a very strong effect on both sisters. Fortunately, as was the case with most cats, the effects of catnip only lasted for maybe 10 minutes or so. I'm surprised to see you here, Valley. Weren't you looking for Rizavum? Naruto asked as they sat around the living room. Kaneko wasn't sitting on his lap, but the catnip must have been giving her some after effects. She sat on the floor and was rubbing her face against his leg. It was very much like a cat seeking affection from their owner. It was also a little weird, but Naruto wasn't going to say anything. We were looking for Rizavum, and we found out where he's hiding. The problem is where we found him and what he was doing there. Valley wore a humorless smile. Do you remember the dragons that attacked the underworld? Now that Kuroka wasn't trying to rape him, he seemed a lot more composed, but he was still sitting as far from the woman as was physically possible. For her part, Kuroka actually had the decency to look a little embarrassed. She wasn't quite blushing, but she also wasn't looking at anyone. It was oddly cute to see the normally confident young woman looking so coy. I do remember. Naruto nodded. What about them? They were created by Rizavum by using a sacred gear known as the Holy Grail, which he acquired from the vampires. I recently learned that he is currently in vampire territory along with Yami. What's more, they have not only allied themselves with the Teps faction, they recently launched an attack on the Carmilla faction and they have taken Rias Grimori and Kiba Yuto hostage, Valley explained. Naruto almost shot to his feet when he heard that. He gripped his pants as a sour expression crossed his face. Rias Grimori had been taken hostage. The words echoed inside of him, rattling him more than anything else could. His girlfriend had been taken hostage by his dark half. Rias Bucko is, no way, Issei exclaimed in shock, eyes widening. I can't believe Rias-sama was taken hostage, Ravel said with furrowed brows. I'm guessing you've already got a good idea of what's going on over there. What does the situation look like? Asked Naruto. Valley leaned back, placed his left leg onto his right, and explained the situation in a calm tone. It's not looking good. Most of the Teps faction has been transformed into modified dragons and the Carmilla faction has currently set up a defensive barrier with Azazel's help, but it won't hold for more than a few more days. If that wasn't bad enough, then there are two more evil dragons present. Apophis and Crom Cruok. It seems they were revived using the power of the Holy Grail. If I'm not mistaken, the Holy Grail is the sacred gear that Valerie has, isn't it? Ravel bit her lower lip. If the Chaos Brigade is using it, then... Valley nodded. It is very likely they took it from Valerie Teps. A somber tension pervaded the room. It was possible to steal someone's sacred gear using a ritual developed by none other than Azazel of the Fallen Angels. Naruto still remembered when Rainier had used that ritual on Asia, stealing her twilight healing at the cost of Asia's life. That was because a sacred gear was tied to the possessor's life. Without it, the original possessor of the sacred gear would die. Gasper was going to be heartbroken. Ravel, where are Akano, Gasper, Ophis, Roswise, and Xenovia? Asked Naruto in a soft voice. Also, where's Metatron? Akano is currently speaking with Sona Citri, Ravel said. Xenovia is training with Gasper, I think. He's been very motivated to grow stronger ever since learning about Valerie. Oh, Gasper. He's going to be heartbroken. Ravel paused, closed her eyes, and then continued in a much softer voice. I think Ophis and Roswise are out shopping for groceries. They left a few minutes before Valley arrived. Metatron is still in heaven. I heard there was a big meeting between the Archangels, Irina added. Lord Michael said they had several important decisions to make that couldn't be made by him alone. Naruto nodded once but didn't say anything. He was thinking about what they should do. It was obvious they needed to travel to vampire territory, rescue Rias and Kiba, and beat back the Chaos Brigade. But it sounded like they would be up against some overwhelming opposition this time. Should he call for aid? No, there was no time for that this time. He would have to work with the people currently present. Irina, Can you go get Gasper and Xenovia and let them know what is happening? Naruto looked at the angel, who nodded once. Please leave this to me, she said. He smiled, though there was no joy in it, and then looked at his male friend. Eyes, I want you to find Akano and tell her to book us a flight that will take us to the vampire's territory. Also, please call Roswise and tell her and Ophis to come home. I can do that, Issei said, standing up with Asia and Rainier, who looked like they were determined to stick with him. As he left, Naruto looked back at the one who had delivered all this bad news. Valley, you and your group are coming with us, right? Of course we are, Valley said like the answer should have been obvious from the very beginning. We've been tracking Rizavam for months now, Biku added with a chuckle. You can't expect us to leave all the fun to you and your group after doing all the legwork, do you? No, I don't. Naruto shook his head, then looked at Lefei. She stared at him for a moment before seeming to know what he wanted. She moved over to his side and sat on the couch where Issei, Asia, and Rainier vacated. It was a smooth action, but she looked a tad nervous. Oh, my. It seems you've already become accustomed to being Naruto's contracted magician, Biku observed. I guess it makes sense. After all, you've been lusting for him since. Don't you dare tease me, or I'll turn you into an ugly toad, Lefei grumbled threateningly. Biku laughed. You can feel free to try, but you know I'm immune to most magics. Naruto didn't pay attention to the fight between Biku and Lefei, which seemed more like a friend teasing his friend for having a crush on their other friend. Something like that. Anyway, Naruto was more interested in continuing his conversation with Valley. Don't you think it would be more efficient to use Arthur's ability to teleport us with Caliburn? Asked Valley. I thought about doing that, but I think we need more time to plan and prepare, Naruto said. Also, Gasper will need some time to come to grips with Valerie's situation. He's going to be very distraught when he learns about what happened, and that could lead to hesitate when the time comes. I can't have him incapable of acting when we need him to. Valley nodded once. It was decisive and quick. He understood how emotional trauma could lead to someone becoming hesitant or even dead to the world. Gasper was certain to become like that once he learned about Valerie. They would need the Dampier's power if they wanted to succeed in rescuing Rias, so they couldn't afford to plunge headfirst into the situation until they knew Gasper would be able to act. Naruto sighed. He had been having a bad feeling ever since Rias left, and now he knew that his bad feeling was completely warranted. Life sucked sometimes. Chapter 57 Vampire Territory under attack. The airplane was silent as it glided through the sky like a bird of prey. They were using one of the House of Gremory's private jets to fly to Northern Europe, home of the vampires, and like all things Gremory, this jet was the epitome of ostentatiousness. Fine upholstery, expensive furnishings, and a fully stocked bar and entertainment center were but a few of the amenities this jet had. Several rooms were available with king-sized beds and their own private bathing rooms. It even possessed a hot tub and a kitchen. This plane was almost like a flying house. I don't know what we can expect to find when we get there, Valley said at length. However, I am certain we can expect heavy fighting. The barrier Azazel put around the Carmilla faction's territory was hastily made and won't last for more than a few days at most. It will probably have been destroyed by the time we arrive. And the enemies we can expect are those modified dragons? Asked Naruto. Yes. Valley nodded once. Rizavam and Yami have turned many of the vampires from the Teps faction into modified dragons. Of course, there are a lot more modified dragons than there are Teps faction members. I suspect he's changed more than just vampires. He might have even kidnapped some humans and changed them. In any case, we couldn't get an accurate estimate of their numbers, but there were at least 1,000 attacking the Carmilla faction's village. So our group of 16 is going to fight against 1,000 modified dragons, Rizavam, Yami, Crom Krauk, Apophis, and maybe even Lilith, Naruto murmured. They couldn't forget about Rizavam's new bodyguard who harbored most of Ophis's power. More or less. Valley shrugged like it wasn't a big deal, but even he had to understand how hopeless the situation sounded. This was an overwhelming force, and while their own group was nothing to scoff as each of them wielded incredible power on their own, it was not enough to contend with such a powerful army. Maybe if they only had to deal with the modified dragons, or if they only needed to fight Rizavam's group, but both. No, that was suicide. Even Naruto knew this. At least fighting them will be interesting, Biku said with a sarcastic smile. You can't deny that. I don't know about you, but I've always wanted to pit myself against overwhelming odds. We won't be fighting alone. There are also the Carmilla faction vampires and Azazel, Valley said. I'm sure they are still fighting even as we speak. If we can link up with them, we can push the modified dragons back and maybe deal with Apophis or Kromkrauk. I'm sure one of them is leading the charge against the Carmilla faction's territory. Naruto gave a non-committal nod as he looked around the airplane, studying the various groups that had branched off after they entered. Everyone had sort of gone their separate ways. It was like they had formed their own little cliques. Issei was with his usual group. It looked like they were playing a game of strip poker, but only Issei was practically won. He was down to his skivvies. On the other hand, Rainier was fully clothed, while Zenobia and Asia had only removed their shirts. Poor Issei was crying about how he was the only one practically won. Rossweiss was sitting by herself, face scrunched up deep in thought. He didn't know what she was thinking. She looked nervous, however. The way she sat and stared at nothing belied the nerves she must have been feeling. Revel, Kaneko, Ophis, and Irina were next to him on the couch. None of them were using his lap as a chair. He didn't feel like now was the appropriate time for that, though his denying them had upset Kaneko and Ophis. The two had complained quite vehemently that his lap was their territory. On that note, Valley and his group had been nearly flabbergasted by how childish Ophis acted despite her new and older-looking body. Only Kuroka and Lefay didn't act shocked. While most people were in groups, Gasper was sitting alone. They had brought his box along, and he was curled up inside of it, his shoulders shaking. He'd been crying until just recently. Naruto wasn't sure when he had stopped, but now that he had, all he was doing was staring at a spot on the floor, though it was more like he was staring through the floor. Naruto looked away and focused on their plan making as Revel began speaking. I believe we can deal with the modified dragons if we use the correct battle formation, she was saying. We'll use a spear point formation to pierce through their assault. Link up with Azazel Sensei and the vampires, and then push them back. I'm thinking the spearhead should be either Naruto-sama, Eyes, or Valley. As the strongest members of our group, you three are the only ones who can create the spear point. What of Kromkrauk and Apophis? Asked Biku. I can deal with them, Ophis stated confidently. Are you sure? Asked Kaneko. Yes. Naruto wasn't sure he liked the idea of a weakened Ophis facing off against two evil dragons, but he knew better than to argue. They didn't have many options here. Someone would have to face off against the two revived evil dragons, and while they were all strong, the only ones who would stand a chance against them were Naruto and Ophis. Maybe I should also take on one of them, Naruto mused out loud. I know you haven't lost all your power, Ophis, but I also know you aren't nearly as strong now as you used to be. Before, you could probably beat them both at the same time while blindfolded and with one hand tied behind your back, but now you have about the same strength I do when I haven't reverse summoned Kurama. While Naruto didn't think his powers were anything to scoff at, Naruto was also aware that his own strength was nothing compared to Kurama or Ophis before Rizavam stole her power. If he were to compare himself to a lake, then Ophis and Kurama were oceans. That was a huge difference in power. The difference between tangible and intangible. In either event, Ophis had gone from being an ocean to a lake. She wouldn't have much more raw power than one of the evil dragons. I guess you do bring up a good point, Ophis murmured, though she didn't seem pleased to acknowledge this fact. In that case, Naruto-sama, Eyes, Valley, and Ophis will create the spearhead to break through the assault, but then Naruto-sama and Ophis will break off to deal with Apophis and Kromkrauk, while Eyes and Valley lead our forces to link up with the vampires and force the modified dragons back, Revel concluded. She bit her lower lip as though something was bothering her, then sighed. As far as plans go, this is very basic. I'm afraid we won't be able to come up with a better one without knowing exactly what we are up against. I wouldn't worry too much about creating a complicated plan, little bird, Kuroka said from where she was lounging. Plans never survive first contact with the enemy anyway. It is better to have a basic, flexible plan that can change to suit the situation than it is to create a complex plan that will leave you vulnerable to attack the moment it falls apart. Maybe that is how you think, but I believe differently, Revel said, shaking her head. An excellently crafted plan can be the key to victory or defeat. I've seen plans that were like masterpieces accomplish what flexibility never could. The only problem is they require the planner to accurately predict what their enemies will do. That means knowing everything there is to know about their enemy, including the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. I sadly don't know enough about Rizavam, Yami, or the others to create an accurate plan. We also don't have enough information on these modified dragons. If I knew more, I'm sure I could create a better plan to deal with them. Guess that means we'll be taking notes on these modified dragons, Naruto mumbled. Maybe we should consider capturing one of them or at least collecting a few corpses to perform autopsies on. His words caused everyone to look at him weird, like he'd said something unusual. At the very least, Biku, Kuroka, Luffy, Arthur, and Kaneko were giving him odd looks. On the other hand, Revel was nodding, which surprised him. If we can find out what makes them tick, we could probably create more adequate countermeasures to deal with them, she said. Do you think you can grab a few during the battle? Just leave it to me, Naruto said. They discussed the plan for a little while longer, but aside from discussing a few particulars about the details of their plan, they didn't make any drastic changes. It was just like Revel said. If they tried creating a more complex plan without knowing their enemy, it would fall apart the moment the enemy reacted in a manner they hadn't predicted. What do we know about Apophis and Crom Cruach? Asked Naruto. Crom Cruach is said to be the strongest evil dragon, Valley replied. He's known as the Crescent Circle Dragon. The legend goes that Crom Cruach was originally controlled by Balor, the evil god from Irish mythology. After Balor was defeated, Crom Cruach traveled the human world and underworld as part of his training. I've heard that he's very different from the other evil dragons. He is calm and quiet. However, it is because he can remain so calm that we should be wary of him. It's the enemies who can calmly observe and assess any situation that we need to be the most cautious of. Naruto murmured as he listened. In his true form, Crom Cruach looks like a majestic black dragon with a black and golden aura. He's a Western dragon, so expect his appearance to conform more along the lines of European myth. In his human form, he looks like a tall man with black and blonde hair. I've also heard his eyes are heterochromatic. And Apophis? Asked Kaneko. Apophis is called the Eclipse Dragon. Even though he's an evil dragon, he has a lot of pride. I'd even say his title of evil dragon is ill-fitting, though he himself has committed numerous evil deeds in the past. Apophis was the one who answered. Her expression was thoughtful. When I met him, it was hundreds of years ago. At the time, he had a very honorable personality and disdained the barbaric brutality of evil dragons like Grendel and Nihilgar. He once told me his wish was to die by the hands of a strong hero. I don't know if his wish was granted, but I do know he died a couple hundred years ago. And now he's been revived by the Holy Grail's power. Arthur pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. How barbaric. It sounded like the two evil dragons they would be fighting actually had some honor to them. He supposed they would be more, chaotic neutral? Lawful evil? He wasn't sure exactly where their moral compass fell, but he was sure he'd figure it out when they exchanged blows. In either event, they would need to be prepared. With their conversation over, everyone went off to do their own thing. Kuroka dragged Kaneko over to a corner and began speaking with her. Luffy went over to Rossweiss and engaged the older woman in conversation. Probably about magic, and Revel started talking to Apophis about something. Valley, Biku, Arthur, and Fenrir also separated and began doing their own thing. As for Naruto, he went over to Gasper. Gasper, how are you holding up? Oh, Naruto. Gasper gave him a wan smile that didn't reach his eyes. I am. Not fine, Naruto interrupted as he sat down next to Gasper's box. Don't try to fool me. How do you really feel? Not good. Gasper sighed and set his chin on his knees. He looked exhausted. I still can't believe it. She is gone. He paused, then spoke in a far softer voice, a mere whisper. Valerie is the entire reason I was able to meet Rias Bucko and everyone else. She helped me escape from my family, even though doing so meant she couldn't escape. To find out that she had her sacred gear stolen, and to not even get the chance to see her again, I feel empty. Naruto asked when Gasper trailed off. Yes, he whispered. I suppose that is how I feel. Naruto and Gasper sat in silence for a moment. As he looked around, he noticed that Asia was no longer playing strip poker with Issei's group but was instead sitting with Revel and Apophis. It looked like she was animatedly saying something to their resident infinite dragon god. He wondered what they were talking about, but he had something more important to do than eavesdrop. What do you want to do now, Gasper? He asked. What do I want? Gasper lifted his head from his knees to look at Naruto. Yes. What do you want to do now that you know what happened to Valerie? Gasper hesitated for a moment, then his expression turned cold. I want to get revenge on them, on the people who stole Valerie's sacred gear and killed her. Naruto nodded with some hesitation. Revenge was something he understood very well since Sasuke had spent his entire life chasing after it, and Naruto had spent most of his life chasing Sasuke. At this point in time, he understood that sometimes revenge was necessary. Kiba was a great example of how revenge could heal some wounds, offer closure. However, he also knew it was important not to lose yourself when taking revenge. Sasuke had lost himself for the longest time. Naruto didn't want to see that happen to Gasper. If it is revenge you want, then I will help you get it, Naruto said seriously. Just promise me one thing. What is it? Asked Gasper. That you will let Rias hold you after you get your revenge, Naruto said seriously. Do not bottle up those feelings. Once your revenge is complete, go to Rias and let out whatever you are feeling. Gasper's eyes went wide at Naruto's suggestion, which probably sounded odd coming from him since Naruto was known to be very possessive of Rias. He admittedly did not want anyone touching her. That just went to show how much Gasper meant to him. Gasper's eyes soon softened a bit as he nodded his head once. Okay. I promise, he said. Naruto smiled and placed a hand on Gasper's shoulder. Senpai and Kahai sat in silence as they watched the others talk. Devil Ninja, Naruto had no idea which country they landed in, though he suspected Romania. Wasn't that where all the vampire stories came from? In either event, immediately upon leaving the airport, Lefay cast magic on everyone to make them all invisible so they could fly to the Carmilla faction's territory. The midnight air was brisk as they flew. Naruto was glad his body ran hotter than most, or he was afraid he'd freeze. When he looked behind him, he noticed that Kaneko had closed the distance between her and Revel and was using the girl's fire wings to keep warm. Would you back off, Kaneko? You're making it hard to fly. Can't be helped. You're just so warm, Sentuki. What in the underworld is a Sentuki? We'll be coming up on the Carmilla faction's territory soon, Valley said to Naruto. We're fortunate it's nighttime. Why is that? Asked Naruto. The two of them were at the head of this flight, leading their group toward the place where battle and bloodshed awaited. Naruto was taking deep breaths to keep calm. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, though he wasn't nervous. The desire to fly ahead of everyone and attack on his own was strong. Because the vampires of the Carmilla faction cannot come out during the day, Ophis answered as she flew up to them. She was still in her adult form. Her modest chest was covered by the same bandages as always, but because she looked older, they had a far more erotic quality that Naruto found pleasing. Too bad now wasn't the time for any sexy shenanigans. Right. Valley nodded. The modified dragons are vampires that have been transformed using the power of the Holy Grail. They no longer need to fear the sun like normal vampires do. Which means they can attack during the day, but the Carmilla vampires cannot, Naruto said, finally seeing what they were getting at. He sighed. How troublesome. It didn't take more than a few moments for their group to come upon the Carmilla faction's territory. The rumbling of explosions and flash of magical attacks met them before they even arrived. The village where the Carmilla faction resided in looked small, barely 200 or 300 buildings in total. All of it, the entire city, was completely surrounded by a shimmering barrier. Ripples spread across the barrier whenever an attack struck it. The barrier appeared fragile, like a thin layer of film that would break at the slightest touch, but it surprisingly held strong against the enemy assault. Or so it seemed at first. Just as Naruto thought the barrier was stronger than it looked, two figures emerged from the horde of modified dragons, and it was a horde. A swarm so thick they reminded him of this show called Attack of the Killer Bees, which had been really dumb, but that was besides the point. The two figures unleashed a powerful aura as they slammed into the barrier and blew a hole clean through it. Cracks spread out from the hole, and those cracks quickly spread across the entire barrier. With a shattering sound and a deafening explosion, the barrier burst apart. The modified dragons roared as they charged in. Screams soon emerged from the village. I guess the barrier reached its limit, Valley said. I'm not surprised. It's been nearly 3 days since their assault began. We have no time to waste. Revel, Naruto called out to the young Phoenix girl, who quickly flew to his side. You'll be in charge of our planning and formations. Direct our forces as you will. Yes. Revel wore a determined expression as she moved behind Naruto. Everyone, form up on Naruto-sama, Valley, Eyes, and Ophis. They are the spear point. We're going to head right in. Break up the modified dragons' formation, then spread out and rescue the vampires being attacked. Keep your eyes out for Crom Cruach and Apophis. Everyone formed up. Naruto was at the very front, but Aiz and Ophis were on his left and right, and Valley was just a little behind Ophis, forming something of a lopsided arrow between the four of them. The rest of their group got behind them as they charged headlong into battle. The modified dragons must not have been expecting them. Naruto and the others reached the back line of the enemy forces without being harassed at all. Targeting one of the modified dragons, Naruto formed two Rasengans, one in each hand, and slammed them into the creature without relent. The modified dragon didn't even have time to roar as Naruto's attack tore it apart. It burst like overripe fruit as Naruto flew past its tattered body. Beside him, Issei wielded Ascalon, the dragon-slaying sword, to cut a dragon's legs off. Ophis had created several dozen snakes, which constricted around numerous dragons in her line of sight. Her power was not what it once was, but she was still an overwhelming strong being, and these modified creatures could not withstand it. They turned black and charred before evaporating like ash on the wind. Valley had already entered his balance breaker. White armor covered his body as he divided the power of nearly a dozen modified dragons at the same time and absorbed it all. Light particles emitted from vents in his back, which was the magic power that he couldn't use because his magic was already filled up. He zipped through the enemy lines like a flash of lightning, and where he disappeared, death was left in his wake. Naruto pushed off the ground and launched himself at the next group of modified dragons. He raised his hand, a Rasengan forming on his palm, and then a magic circle appeared beneath it as he visualized what he wanted. He slammed his jutsu into the magic circle. The Rasengan took off like a bullet, slammed into one modified dragon, tore through it, and then slammed into several more. Each enemy it touched was torn apart, blood and guts flying everywhere, splattering the ground with wet thuds. Despite their strong start, after killing nearly 100 of the modified dragons, a large number turned toward them and attacked. Naruto gritted his teeth as he considered using the Rikudo Senin Moto and Kurama's Chakra Shroud, but he had a time limit on those. He needed to save them for Crom Cruach or Apophis. Their original plan had been to break through the enemy forces with an overwhelming attack, but there were simply too many. It was like slogging through mud. Sure, they could get pretty far if they ran full tilt before hitting the mud, but they would eventually slow down as more mud pushed against them. Aiz. Back up Xenovia and Irina. Help protect Asia, Ophis, Valley, Naruto. You three need to keep pushing forward. Akeno, Roswise, and Lefei. Support them with magic, Kaneko and Kuroka. I need you two to head up front and replace Aiz as our heavy hitters. Gasper, enter your balance breaker. Even the odds for us. Under Ravel's directions, everyone followed their assignments. Naruto maintained his place at the front as he, Ophis, and Valley attacked the modified dragons. Behind them came the magic users. Akino's holy lightning blitzed overhead and struck a dragon, causing its head to explode. Roswise and Lefei created multiple magic circles above them. There must have been hundreds. They glowed briefly before unleashing a barrage of magical attacks that descended from the sky like the unholy wrath of an enraged god. Two blurs, one black and one silver, rushed up and joined the three fighting at the front. Kaneko had already entered her Chiron mode. She'd grown several years older, her voluptuous body easily a match for her older sister as she gathered the nature-based ki from her surroundings and synchronized it with her Tuki. She fired off dozens of bright spheres. Each one struck a modified dragon and sent them flying. Meanwhile, Kuroka seemed far more stealthy than her sister. She appeared and disappeared at will like a ghost or a mirage. When she disappeared again, a dragon would drop to the ground dead. Naruto knew he couldn't allow himself to be outclassed here, so while he didn't activate any of his special abilities, he did begin using more ninja tricks. A quick application of the Shunshin no Jutsu took him past a pair of modified dragons. Neither enemy noticed the glint of ninja wire as they turned to him not until he had already captured them within his trap. They roared and struggled, but Naruto pulled the ninja wire taut, then activated the multiple exploding tags he had strategically placed on their bodies. The modified dragons were blown to bits. Naruto, I am sensing two immense powers up ahead. Those must be the evil dragons. Naruto grunted as he leapt forward, slammed a Rasengan into the face of one enemy, then used the replacement technique. Barely a split second later, The modified dragon he had replaced himself with exploded as it was struck by a powerful magic attack that reminded Naruto of Issei's dragon shot. The modified dragon was blown to bits. Naruto followed the magical attack to its source, another dragon just a few meters to his left, and he launched a Rasengan at it with wind magic. The creature's head exploded when his attack struck. They finally reached the village, which was in chaos. Vampires were screaming everywhere, some fighting back, but most of them trying to run. Women dressed as maids waded into the foray, attacking with darkness and shadows. Naruto looked to his left as several spears of darkness erupted from the ground and struck a number of modified dragons. Much to the vampire's surprise, however, the modified dragons did not appear to be hurt. In fact, the spears merely shattered against the hard exterior. It was at this moment that an incredible pressure descended upon everything, but it was not coming from the enemies. This feeling came from Gasper. Gasper had transformed into a monster of darkness, a creature with a dragon's head that looked like it could swallow the whole world. A loud roar echoed from Gasper as the world around them became covered in a thick darkness. Strange beasts emerged from this darkness and began attacking the modified dragons. It was clear at a glance that these creatures were not powerful enough to kill their enemies on their own. But Gasper waded into the fray and attacked with clawed hands. He swung his arms in wide arcs. His enemies were sent flying like they were paperweights. With a grin on his face, Naruto was able to push through their forces with Office slightly behind him. He left the rest of the battle to Valley, Issei, and the others. They could deal with the small fry while he and Office went after the two greater powers. Following the source of the immense power, Naruto and Office reached the mansion that could only belong to the Carmilla faction's leader. The great double doors were busted wide open. A pair of dead guards were lying on the ground, their mangled bodies a gruesome sight to behold. Naruto and Office ignored them as they raced into the mansion. "You can feel it, yes?" Office asked. "Of course," Naruto said with a nod. "There are two powerful dragons up ahead." Office tilted her head as they raced through a corridor that had bodies littering the floor. "They're definitely Crom Cruach and Apophis." Naruto was already prepared as he and Office burst into a massive room. It was an audience chamber. The polished marble floor was stained red with blood, bodies lay strewn about where they'd been killed, and at the very end, near a throne, were several figures. Naruto recognized two of them. Azazel was standing before Elmenhilda and a beautiful woman he guessed was the queen of the Carmilla faction. While both women appeared fine, Azazel was bleeding from a head wound and his artificial arm had been torn off. He looked like he'd seen better days. "Hey, Azazel. What the hell are you doing there, standing around like an idiot?" asked Naruto as he and Office slowed their run to a walk. The two evil dragons turned to him. Elmenhilda and the queen also looked at him and Office. While the queen merely blinked, Elmenhilda's eyes widened in shock. "Naruto," Azazel gaped. "And Office too? How did you two get here?" "I flew on a private jet," Naruto answered. "The others are helping defeat the modified dragon army. We heard there was trouble, so we're here to kick ass and take some. We're here to back you up." Azazel gave Naruto a flat look at his slip, but then he chuckled. There was no way he could be mad when Naruto came here to help out in his time of need. "You two are just in time," Azazel said. "I'm on my last leg. That is why we are here." Naruto grinned before shifting his gaze to the two evil dragons, silent up to now. "You two must be Apophis and Crom Cruach. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Rias Gremory's greatest servant, a high-class devil, and the one who will be kicking your asses today. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance." "Devil Ninja, Kaneko. There's a family over there that's in trouble." "I'm on it, Aiz-san. Provide support for Zenovia and Irina." "Got it, Biku. Lefei is being overwhelmed. I'll back her up then." Revel stood next to Asia, Akano, Roswise, and Kuroka. Akano, Roswise, and Kuroka were providing her and Asia with protection so they could do their jobs, namely, healing and directing the flow of battle. Even now, when Revel turned to Asia, she could see the young woman using twilight healing to launch powerful bursts of healing power from a distance. Several meters to her left, Kaneko had just slammed herself fist first into a modified dragon. The power of her attack created a shockwave so intense even Revel could feel it from where she stood. The modified dragon's cheek seemed to ripple as it caved in and the creature was blasted off its feet, striking the ground and skidding across it like a rag doll, tumbling end over end. There were more modified dragons surrounding the family, but Kaneko looked unbothered as she thrust out her fists, unleashing blast after blast of senjutsu energy. Each sphere flew forward and struck a modified dragon in the face, chest, or back. They exploded and sent the monsters stumbling. The modified dragons turned around. They roared like they were issuing a challenge, and it was a challenge Revel's friend was more than willing to rise up to. Kaneko raced forward, leapt into the air, and spun around like a top, extending her left foot and striking a modified dragon with a kick so powerful Revel was certain the modified dragon's neck had snapped. She could have sworn she heard a cracking sound as the creature's head twisted around a full 180 degrees. The modified dragon spun like a ballerina doing a pirouette, then struck the ground and didn't get back up. Issei, Irina, and Xenovia were fighting side by side, one wielding X-Durandal, the new and improved Durandal that the church had created by combining all the Excaliburs into it with alchemy. The other wielded Ascalon. Its dragon-slaying powers were incredibly effective against these modified dragons. It cut through flesh with every swing. Blood spilled to the floor by the buckets. Unlike the other two, Irina did not have any super powerful holy sword, but what she lacked in weaponry, she made up for in skill. She used her angelic powers like she had been born into them. Irina created a variety of weapons from spears to swords that she attacked with. Some she threw, others she wielded. Irina seemed to prefer wielding swords while launching spears at her foes. Like this, she was able to fight at both long and close range. Gasper. There are more modified dragons coming from behind us. I will take them on. Gasper's voice was like a baritone rumble, so different from his normally high-pitched and girlish voice, as he turned around and attacked the dozen or so modified dragons with his own monstrous creations. They formed from the darkness like denizens of the night. Revel could not suppress a shiver as the monsters created by her friend attacked the modified dragons, swarming over them like an army of ants. An explosion high above her caught Revel's attention. She looked up to see Le Fay and Biku fighting an aerial battle. Le Fay was unleashing a large variety of spells into the horde of foes high above the ground. Norse magic, devil magic, black magic, elemental magic. The breadth of her magical knowledge astounded Revel, but she knew the magician had been studying diligently to become the best contracted magician she could. Meanwhile, Biku was using his extendable staff to attack as he flew on his flying nimbus, an orange cloud that could somehow hold the weight of a person. He was quite adept with his staff. He swung it around his body like a performer, slamming it into the face or torso of a modified dragon. And he was so strong, each attack sent his enemies flying backward. However, this was not enough to kill the modified dragons, whose bodies had obviously been enhanced by the powers of the Holy Grail. I think we're being overwhelmed, Rossweiss admitted in a strained voice. Indeed. For every modified dragon they defeated, another 3 were there to take its place. They must have defeated 100 by now, but more kept coming. Even Valley was being pushed back. She could see him struggling up in the sky as he dealt with what looked like an entire swarm. They were like bees buzzing around him and attacking from all sides. You're right, Revel said. This isn't good. She bit her lip. If we could have you 3 go on the offensive and coordinate your attacks, I think we could turn the tide, but… You know as well as I do that we can't leave you 2, Akeno said. Nya, the fallen one is right, Kuroka agreed. If we left you 2 alone, there'd be no one around to protect you. And my Chiron would be quite sad if you kicked the bucket. It was just as they said. If they left, she and Asia would have no one around to protect them. Revel was not weak. However, her role right now was not a frontline fighter and more along the lines of a general directing troops. Her job was to locate weaknesses they could exploit or direct their forces toward holes in their own defenses. And unlike her, Asia didn't have any attack power at all. She was a healer. If these 3 left her, then she would be completely defenseless. You just need someone who can protect us, right? Asked Asia. Ah, yes. That's right, Revel said. Then I think I might have an idea. Revel felt confusion for but a moment before her eyes widened in realization. I see, you're going to use your pact. Excuse me, Akeno interrupted. Little Asia, you have a pact? With who? With what? Ah. Mistress Akeno-san. Yes, I can create pacts with dragons, Asia answered as she clasped her hands in prayer. What? Several people shouted at once, Akano, Roswise, and Kuroka. None of them knew about this, but Ravel did. She's been talking with Office a lot, Ravel explained. Asia hates that all she can do is heal people, and that she requires protection, which lowers our fighting forces. A while ago, she formed a pact with a dragon who is quite powerful. I was not there when it happened, but Asia mentioned it to me on the plane. As Ravel explained everything to the three shocked women, Asia began chanting. Answer my call, O Golden King. Come to me, and you shall receive my reward. A golden magic circle appeared in front of Asia, growing stronger with every passing second. It was a dragon gate. Please come out, Gigantes dragon. Fafnir-san, heed my call and come to my aid. The moment she finished her chant, a massive dragon with 4 giant legs and golden scales appeared. A magnificent aura emitted from the western dragon's body. More than 10 meters tall, this dragon did not have any wings, but that did not diminish its majesty in the least. It looked strong, far more powerful than any of these modified dragons. Ravel knew who this dragon was. Fafnir, one of the 5 great dragon kings, the dragon king who made a pact with Azazel and became his armor. While Akano, Roswise, and Kuroka looked shocked, Ravel said, because Azazel isn't fighting on the front lines anymore. He cancelled his pact with Fafnir Dono, but he thought it was a waste to just let him go, so he urged Asia to form a pact with Fafnir instead. It's no wonder Ophis gave her a blessing. She seems to have a strong affinity with dragons. I see, Akano murmured while looking speculatively at Asia. While none of her abilities or powers have been enhanced, her compatibility with dragons seems to have increased greatly because of Ophis's blessing. With Ophis acting as the mediator, Fafnir made a pact with Asia, Ravel continued. He's a legendary dragon that has been gathering treasures from all across the world for his collection. Asia needed to prepare a treasure that was enough to satisfy him to complete the pact. I am not certain what she prepared, but I assume the price she paid was great indeed. I wonder what she gave him, Roswise murmured as she fired off another barrage of magic at several modified dragons that got too close to them. Then she paused. Hey, what's that on Fafnir's horn? Everyone looked at Fafnir as he loomed over Asia. Indeed, there was something on his horn. It was a cotton white object that wrapped around the horn. A cloth? Some kind of fabric? At that moment, the dragon rumbled as it stood before Asia, its voice ancient and booming. You who have summoned me, what would you ask of me? Fafnir-san, please protect me and Ravel from these modified dragons until the battle is over, Asia requested. I can do that. However, you know there is a price to pay every time you summon me. If you wish me to aid you, then bequeath unto me your glorious treasure. No one present knew exactly what treasure Asia had given to Fafnir to form a pact with him, but they all knew it must have been a steep price indeed. This was a dragon king, after all. Fafnir was in existence just beneath Dedrage and Albion in terms of power and importance. What could a girl like Asia give him? Her life force? Her virginity? Wait, she couldn't give him that since Issei had taken it. Still, everyone wondered what kind of terrible price she had paid. Do not worry. I have already prepared your payment, Asia said as she reached into her habit and pulled something out. It was weighted up, so they could not see what it was. Ravel thought it looked like a ball of cloth similar to the one wrapped around Fafnir's horn. Wait a moment, Ravel muttered, eyes going wide, is that? Fafnir leaned down until his horn was right in front of Asia, who unwound the wadded up cloth in her hand to reveal a cute pair of light blue panties. Yes. Panties. Asia's face was flushed a bright shade of red as she reached out and wrapped the panties around Fafnir's horn. Maybe it was just Ravel, but Fafnir looked unbelievably happy as he received the panties. Zenobia and Irina both saw what she had done and began shouting at her. What are you doing, Asia? Aren't those your favorite panties? How can you give those up? When Issei saw what she was doing, even he could not stop himself from shouting at her. Don't do it, Asia. That's your favorite pair of underwear. When Asia didn't stop what she was doing, Issei glared at Fafnir, ignoring the battle around him entirely. Hey! You perverted dragon! What the hell do you want Asia's panties for, huh? You of all people have no right to call someone a pervert, Ravel thought, though she didn't say that out loud. Dost thou not understand? These panties are my treasure. It's too much of a treasure for you, Issei snapped. Give them baaccccckkkkk. I refuse. If it's panties you want, Then I will give you panties. Leave Asius alone. Xenovia shouted as she attempted to strip her battle suit off while in the middle of battle. What are you doing, Xenovia? You don't even wear panties when under your battlesuit, Irina countered. Ku. You're right. Damn it. Hey, Fafnir, can you not take my battlesuit instead? I prefer this blonde beauty's panties. This panty sister's pantalones are my greatest treasure. Did he really just call Asia's undies pantalones? Asked Akeno, looking like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm more shocked that a dragon king like Fafnir would demand panties as payment, Roswise muttered. She looked like she'd just been told the entire world had come to an end. Ravel imagined she was depressed that yet another ultra-powerful being, a dragon king at that, had turned out to be nothing more than a pervert with a panty fetish. Fear not, young panty sister. I shall protect you and the Phoenix girl with all my being until this battle is done. Fafnir roared. It was a majestic declaration, a promise of protection, and yet, any and all sense of majesty was ruined by the fact that Fafnir was saying that while sniffing a young girl's panties. For panties. Well, whatever, it was time for their counterattack. Devil Ninja, Naruto's words rang across the entrance hall, and the people who'd been inside of it when he and Ophis arrived all stared at him like he was an idiot. He was used to people looking at him like that, so it didn't bother him, more importantly. You okay, old man? Not gonna die on us, are you? Asked Naruto. I'll live. Azazel gave Naruto a wry smile. Good. Good. I'm glad. In that case, after I kick the collective asses of these two losers, you can tell me how you managed to let my girlfriend get kidnapped. Naruto smiled at Azazel, and it was such a blindingly bright smile filled with killing intent that even the former head of the Grigori could only shudder and look away. While Naruto was pretending they didn't exist, he hadn't forgotten about Crom Cruach and Apophis. He had been given a basic description of Crom Cruach, so the one with blonde and black hair was obviously him. That meant the brown-skinned young man was Apophis. The one with blonde and black hair smiled. You're going to kick our asses, are you? I see. You must be Naruto Uzumaki. You certainly do look a lot like Yami. I can see the resemblance, though you are so much sunnier than he is that looking at you two is like looking at night and day. You talk an awful lot for an evil dragon, Naruto said. Are you gonna introduce yourself, or do I need to punch you first? I am Crom Cruach, Crom said with a smirk, battle me. So you are Crom Cruach, huh? Naruto nodded once. Okay. I'll fight you. Then he turned to Ophis. Think you can handle the other one? Ophis stared at the other evil dragon, who had also not looked away from her since they entered, and then nodded once. You can leave that one to me. I might have lost most of my power, but a baby dragon on Apophis's level is still no match for me. That's what I like to hear. I see you have not changed at all in the past several hundred years, Ophis, Apophis said, speaking in a manner that was surprisingly refined. Naruto was a little shocked. Well, far be it for me to neglect the honor of dueling with you. You would have never done such a thing in the past. I suspect you wouldn't fight me if you were at your full power either. We have always been beneath you. No, Ophis corrected. I would fight you even at full power if Naruto asked me to. Naruto? Apophis glanced at Naruto as he and Crom Cruach squared off. After a moment, he sighed, shook his head, and looked back at Ophis. So I see. That boy must be important to you. He is my lover, Ophis said, puffing out her modest chest. Apophis didn't look like he knew what to say. Naruto had kept one ear on the conversation between the two, but most of his attention was on Crom Cruach, who had not spoken once since his initial words. It seemed he really was a lot quieter than the other evil dragons. His outburst before must have been out of character for him. This place is too crowded for a proper fight, Crom Cruach said at last. Follow me. Pointing at the ceiling, Crom Cruach unleashed some kind of incredible attack that slammed into the ceiling. It was like he'd unleashed his aura and shaped it into a bullet. The bullet blew a gaping hole in the ceiling, which he flew out of. Naruto didn't hesitate as he extended his wings and followed after him. It wasn't long before they left the village completely behind. The sounds of battle from the Gremory and Valley groups fighting off the modified dragons vanished as dirt roads and stone houses were replaced with trees and grass. Naruto wondered how far they were going to travel. Crom Cruach sat down on a grassy plain that appeared almost idyllic, like one of those prairies people see in old American movies about pilgrims and stuff. Naruto remembered seeing something like that. What was it called? Home, Homeward Bound. No, that was about dogs. Well, if he couldn't remember it, that just meant it wasn't important enough to be remembered. I'm a little surprised you decided to fight me instead of Ophis, Naruto said. Ophis has lost the vast majority of her powers, Crom Cruach replied. There is no sense in fighting her when she barely even has a tenth of her previous power. You, on the other hand. The dragon in human form grinned. You have quite a bit of power. I can sense it boiling within you. I'd like to see that power for myself, to test myself against it. I'll warn you now, I'm much stronger than Rizavam. Meh. Rizavam is a pussy, Naruto said. The only one who can pose me trouble right now is Yami, and I've got ways of countering him. Do you now? Crom Cruach was still grinning as he shifted his feet against the ground. I hope you don't expect those counters to work against me. I don't. They are Yami specific, Naruto admitted as he also shifted along the ground. But don't worry. I can kick your ass even without those counters. You ready? HMPH. I have been ready. Naruto thought the banter he was trading with Crom Cruach was a little odd. It felt more like the banter between opponents getting ready for a match rather than enemies fighting to the death. He guessed it was because he couldn't sense any killing intent from Crom Cruach. All he felt was an intense desire for battle. The need to feel the thrill of fighting, or in other words, fighting spirit. This dragon was filled with it. With a deep inhalation of breath, Naruto activated his Rikudo Senin Moto, then just as quickly called upon Kurama's awesome power. Kurama's chakra surged through him and transformed Naruto's chakra cloak further. Coated in yellow chakra, a circular design featured prominently over his stomach, and the whisker-like markings on his face becoming thicker. He only entered the initial mode. Rabbit-like ears formed on his head as 10 black spheres appeared around him. Grabbing 2 of the spheres, Naruto transformed them into a pair of shortened bow staffs. Crom Cruach smiled. What an amazing transformation. I can already tell this is going to be fun. Power erupted from Crom Cruach, an insane amount of energy that ruptured the ground and caused him to become engulfed in flames. This was his dragon aura. It was the same aura that had destroyed the roof. No more words were spoken. Naruto burst forth like a bullet, reaching Crom Cruach in a matter of moments and swinging the bow staff in his left hand. A detonation of pure power erupted between them as the dragon raised his left arm. Bow staff met arm and the two clashed. They did not remain like this. Leaping backward, the two quickly closed the distance once more and began attacking the other at speeds only a few people would have been able to follow. Crom Cruach was grinning widely as Naruto attacked him with both bow staffs, twirling around and swinging the weapons at odd angles, hiding one attack within another, using feints and deception. One particularly strong thrust broke through the dragon's guard, sending Crom Cruach soaring backwards. He flipped around. His feet struck ground, tearing apart the surface as he tried to halt his backward momentum. It was at this moment that the remaining 8 truth-seeking balls shot toward Crom Cruach. He saw them coming, inhaled a deep breath, and unleashed an immensely powerful flame. The fires raged and widened, engulfing the truth-seeking balls. However, the flames could not stop them. All 8 truth-seeking balls burst through the flames. While Crom Cruach's eyes widened in shock, he did not let himself become distracted. Power coursed through him as he slammed his fist into one of the truth-seeking balls. The dragon aura he unleashed sent it soaring back. He then proceeded to strike the remaining 7 as they came at him. Naruto was pretty shocked. He's awfully powerful. Not many people can punch a truth-seeking ball and live. I'd say his power is on par with you in this form. At present, you have about the same power as one of the Dragon Kings. HMPH. It is unfortunate we decided not to reverse summon me. I'd have already reduced him to atoms if we had. Naruto smiled grimly. I would like to save reverse summoning you for when I really need it. A trump card is only good if used sparingly. Oh, that reminds me. Do you want to get out of the seal for a while when we get back home? I would. Okay then. Naruto finished his conversation with Kurama just as Crom Cruach finished punching away the truth-seeking balls. Using his insane speed, Naruto then appeared right next to Crom Cruach and tried to strike him with a thrust of the bow staff on his right hand. It was blocked. This did not deter Naruto, who swung the bow staff in his other hand at his enemy's head. That too was blocked. You are very strong, Crom Cruach muttered with a grin, veins bulging from his neck. I've never met someone as strong as you. However, it seems there is something inside of you that's even stronger. Your point? Naruto asked with a strained grunt as he fought for dominance in this struggle. His arms were straining, the muscles drawn taut. Crom Cruok was indeed a powerful opponent. It felt to Naruto like his arms would be torn off if he wasn't careful. Bring it out, Crom Cruok demanded. Fuck you. If I brought out Kurama, your ass would be grass in less than a second. After saying these words, Naruto surprised Crom Cruok by launching his foot in a kick that struck the man right in the testicles. So unexpected was this attack that Crom Cruok could do nothing as his gonads were driven into his pelvis. An evil dragon of unmitigated power he might be, but he was still a man, and a punch to the nuts was not something he could withstand, especially when it was delivered by someone whose power was comparable to his own. That was dirty, Crom Cruok gasped as he leapt back and grabbed his nutsack. Ha! Naruto barked as he placed his hands on his hips. There's no such thing as a clean fight to begin with. All fights are dirty. And I'm a fucking ninja, in case you didn't realize that. My motto is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. A ninja? You? Crom Cruok looked shocked. There's no way. Ninja are subtle and stealthy. You're loud and obnoxious. What did you say? Naruto raged. I dare you to say that again. I'll say it as many times as you need to hear it. You are not a ninja. Grr. That does it. Now I'm angry. Naruto appeared before Crom Cruok with a massive ball of spinning chakra in his hand. This was not a standard Rasengan, however. Spinning within the ball was magma. The Rasen Shuriken with a lava-infused nucleus emitted blades of steam that spun around it. The heat was so intense that Crom Cruok's skin had already burst out in sweat. Crom Cruok's eyes widened as Naruto shoved the jutsu into his face. The attack struck moments later. Naruto vanished from the spot and reappeared several dozen meters away, staring at the massive explosion of lava and wind. He didn't even blink as the intense searing wind struck him in the face. His eyes were narrowed as he stared at the resulting explosion. Think that got him? No, he did not die, though I no longer sense his presence. Naruto clicked his tongue. Well, damn. I was hoping to finish him off, although, that guy seems surprisingly nice for a supposed evil dragon. I'm beginning to wonder why someone like that decided to join up with a loser like Rizavam. Because he is a battle maniac. Did you see how crazed his eyes got when you two began fighting? I bet he joined because he thought he'd be able to fight all kinds of strong opponents. Probably. Either way, he's gone for now. Naruto looked at the massive crater that had formed from his attack, filled with steam and bubbling magma. It would be quite a while before the magma cooled down. He wondered if he should leave it like that, but then he just shrugged, extended his wings, and took off. He was sure the Carmilla faction could deal with it. He wanted to get back to the village and help his friends. Devil Ninja. Returning to the village, Naruto found that the battle had already concluded. The modified dragons lay strewn across the ground, corpses every one of them. Most of them had not died a clean death either. Many were missing limbs or their bodies were caved in like something containing incredible might had struck them with the force of a war god's sledgehammer. Several of them even had holes in their bodies, blood leaking out and staining the ground. The vampires their group had rescued looked uncertain of what to do. Most of them were huddled together and staring at Naruto's group like they were monsters, but a few of the braver ones were going up to Issei and the others, thanking them for protecting them. Huh? Naruto knew how arrogant and prideful vampires were, so it was a bit odd seeing them thank someone from another race. As Naruto sat down, he went over to Revel, who was in the process of directing the cleanup. Ice-san, Kaneko, and Valley, I need you three to begin piling these bodies. We should cremate them before they begin to rot. Why do I have to pile bodies like this? Because, Kaneko, you have a lot more brute strength than most people here. Grr. How are things looking, Revel? Asked Naruto as he walked up to her. The other three were already heading off to grab the bodies. Naruto watched as Issei grabbed the tail of a modified dragon and began dragging it across the ground. A little ways over, Valley was using just one hand to grab several bodies at once. Kaneko was grumbling as she did the same thing Valley was. Naruto-sama. Revel turned to him with a bright smile. Everything is going well. We managed to defeat the modified dragons, though it wasn't easy. Some of us received serious injuries, if it wasn't for Asia summoning Fafnir. Revel told Naruto about how Asia had apparently formed a pact with Fafnir with Ophus's help, something he had not known about. He was a little surprised since Ophus had never mentioned anything, but then again, she probably just thought it wasn't worth mentioning. Nice job. Can I leave things here to you? I need to head back to the palace to speak with Azazel and the queen, Naruto said. Yes. Please leave everything out here to me. "'Kay, I'm off." Leaving this matter to Revel, Naruto flew back into the air and traveled down the hole in the castle roof, landing on the entrance hall floor with a light tap. Ophus, Azazel, Elmenhilda, and the queen were all present. Apophis was missing, however. "Did Apophis retreat?" asked Naruto. Ophis shook her head. "I didn't feel like dealing with him, so I opened a portal and threw him into the dimensional gap. He should be able to find his way back to this dimension, eventually, but it will take a while for him to tear a hole through it." Naruto almost chuckled at how Ophis like that was. This little dragon god was the kind of person who would always use the most expedient method of dealing with someone. He wondered how Apophis felt at being treated like a nuisance. Naruto could imagine the look of rage on the evil dragon's face as he was tossed into the dimensional gap like he was yesterday's trash. Since the battle was concluded and the two evil dragons were no longer a threat, Naruto turned to Azazel, Elmenhilda, and the queen. Queen Carmilla was a woman of peerless beauty, with skin so white it was like freshly fallen snow and breasts large enough to make Issei Hyodo salivate. She had a thin waist and wide hips. Her body, adorned with an immaculate dress like something from Europe's Renaissance era, fit her so perfectly it was like she'd come out of the pages of an old fantasy novel. She reminded Naruto of a noble from the time of King Arthur's court. "Is your name Neo Claudius?" Naruto asked suddenly. The sound of Azazel smacking his own face echoed through the room. "I do not know who this Neo Claudius is, but I assure you I am not them." Queen Carmilla spoke in a cold voice, and then paused. She considered him for a moment before sighing softly. "You have rendered us great aid during our time of need. We shan't forget it." "You're welcome," Naruto said with a sunny grin. "I'm glad we made it in time." The smile left his face. "However, I don't think we have time to celebrate right now. I might have arrived in time to help, but the problem you face hasn't gone away, has it?" "No, you are correct. It has not," Queen Carmilla agreed. "Let's take this somewhere we can relax," Azazel said. "I don't think I can stand for much longer." Azazel's arm was now back in place. It was that artificial sacred gear he had made that looked more like a robotic prosthetic than a sacred gear. However, even with his body back in one piece, he really did look like he'd been put through the ringer. His body was covered in scars, bruises, and he was still bleeding. Naruto created a clone and asked it to bring Asia to them. In the meantime, their group adjourned to a room just shy of the entrance hall. It was a large and ostentatious room that was far too big for a simple meeting. Queen Carmilla sat at a table on the opposite side of Naruto and Azazel. Elmenhilda did not sit down, opting to stand behind her queen and stare at Naruto with an inscrutable look. He tried his best to ignore her, but it was quite difficult. "I suppose we should start by informing you about what happened here," Azazel said with a sigh. "It happened several days after Rias and Kiba left for the Tepes clan's ancestral home and never returned. We were attacked by Apophis, Crom Cruach, and an army of those dragons. We were able to push them back, and I erected a barrier to protect us, but, well, I'm sure you saw how that turned out. The barrier was something I hastily put together. It just wasn't strong enough to protect us for long." "I'd say it protected you long enough," Naruto said. "Tell me about those dragons. I've heard they are modified dragons using the Holy Grail. Is that true?" "It's true." Queen Carmilla was the one who spoke, her voice soft and ephemeral, but also laced with a quiet anger. "Those dragons were once proud members of the vampire race. However, they were changed into those abominations by the powers of the Holy Grail." She slowly clenched her hands, resting on the table, into fists. "They wanted to remove the weakness we vampires have. You should know this since it is common knowledge, but vampires are weak to sunlight, must drink blood to stay alive, can't enter buildings unless we have been invited, cannot cross running water, and cannot stand garlic. Of course, like devils, we are also weak against objects related to the church such as crosses and holy water. The Tepes faction wished to remove those weaknesses and used the Holy Grail, but they were all fooled. Thanks to the presence of Apophis and Crom Cruach, we've learned that the one who modified them is none other than Rizavam," Azazel said. "I'm sure you already know this since Valley is with you. But the Chaos Brigade formed an alliance with the Tepes faction. Of course, it was just a ruse meant to get the Holy Grail. Once Rizavam and Yami had what they wanted, they used the Holy Grail to turn everyone in the Tepes faction into a dragon like you saw. It was at this moment that Naruto's clone returned with Asia in tow. The young blonde girl walked in and traveled over to their table. I'm here. Naruto ni-san. Naruto didn't think he'd ever get tired of having Asia call him big brother. This joy must be what Sirzex felt when Naruto called him Aniki. Such a wonderful feeling. Thanks for coming. Azazel is injured. Think you can heal him? Of course. Asia went to Azazel's side and used Twilight Healing on the fallen angel, who sighed in relief as his injuries slowly vanished. Once Asia was done, she left the room, presumably heading back outside to help the others wherever she could. How many modified dragons would you say the Chaos Brigade has? Asked Naruto. If we assume everyone from the Tepes faction has been turned into a modified dragon, then at least 5,000. Azazel crossed his arms. However, I'm willing to bet you anything they have a lot more at their disposal. I'm guessing Rizavam didn't just stop at modifying only the vampires. He's probably done the same thing to humans in the surrounding area, and maybe even further out. We don't know how long the Holy Grail has been in his possession, so we are not sure how much he has used it. That was not good. Naruto understood how valuable information was. If they didn't know what kind of forces they were up against, it would be impossible to create even a basic plan of action. Say they created a plan to deal with 5,000 modified dragons, only to discover the forces arrayed against them was twice that number. They would never survive. If they wanted to come up with a plan to rescue Rias and stop Rizavam and Yami, they needed to have accurate intel. I'll ask Valley and his group to do some reconnaissance, Naruto said at last. With luck, they will be able to give us a much clearer picture of what we're up against. In the meantime, we should call for reinforcements. I'm afraid most everyone is busy, Azazel admitted. Most of my Grigori are currently shoring up defenses in heaven, which has come under attack by the Chaos Brigade. They're trying to find a way into heaven right now. While they haven't succeeded yet, we believe it is only a matter of time. The devils under Sirzex have currently teamed up with the Norse and Greek gods. It seems Hades has betrayed the Greek gods and joined the Chaos Brigade. To make matters worse, the Titans have joined the Chaos Brigade too. For those of us who don't know much about Greek mythology, can you explain who the Titans are? Asked Naruto. He knew the Greek gods only because of what happened with Sirzex and the other faction leaders. The Titans are deities from Greek mythology who preceded the Olympians, the current rulers of the Greek pantheon. They are children of the primordial deities, Uranus and Gaia. While we don't know if all the Titans have joined the Chaos Brigade, we do know that Oceanus, Tethys, Hyperion, and Cronus have joined and are wreaking havoc in Greece right now. There's even a rumor going around that Kronos, the primordial god who controls time in Greek mythology, has joined them. This has yet to be confirmed, however. Naruto had no idea who any of these deities were, but he at least knew enough to understand they were trouble. It sounded like these Titans were possibly an even greater threat than the evil dragons. This was just too troublesome. Naruto wished there was some kind of scale to measure how powerful certain people were. He wanted to know how these Titans compared to beings like Rizavam and Sirzex, who were considered some of the strongest devils. Let's put this aside for the moment, Naruto said at last. I'll have Arthur use Caliburn to teleport the Sea Tree Peerage here. I think we should also bring over Lix, Rule, and Angelus along with their groups. If there really are 5,000 or more modified dragons, then just us won't be enough. Even if each person who came with Naruto was individually strong, they could not withstand such overwhelming numbers by themselves. They'd managed to defeat the several hundred-strong army of modified dragons attacking the Carmilla faction, but that was nowhere close to the forces that would be arrayed against them. At least, that was what Naruto assumed. Azazel agreed they needed more people. Queen Carmilla also said that she would make a formal request from them and even planned to join the three factions alliance, stating that matters had spiraled too far out of their control because of how insulated they had become. I believe it is time we join the world at large, she admitted. We can no longer afford to ignore our neighbors. It was a good idea, and Naruto hoped it meant the vampires would become upstanding members of their alliance. They needed some good news after what he had just learned. Devil Ninja, after the battle concluded and the people settled down, Naruto had Valley order Arthur to travel back to Kuo Academy so he could bring over Sona and her peerage. He also asked Ophis if she could travel to heaven and inform Lix, Rule, and Angelus if they could head over with their brave saints. Arthur had not appreciated being asked to do something, but he didn't go against the order since it had come from Valley and not Naruto, even if they knew that was a flimsy excuse. Ophis had not even put up an argument at all, but she did demand to have sex with him when she got back. Since they could not proceed on the matter of what to do about the Chaos Brigade without the others, Sona, Lix, Rule, and Angelus Azazel had said they should take advantage of this opportunity to rest. Naruto honestly didn't think he could rest. He felt far too high-strung. Rias Gremory had been kidnapped and was possibly facing the threat of a looming death. Although they were the same person, he had no idea what Yami would do in a situation like this. Yami has been infected by the darkness of this world, Kurama said. I am sure you sensed it. Yeah, back in the elemental nations, Yami had never been evil. He was just sad, lonely. He embodied all of the negativity I felt. It was easy to understand him because it was the same as understanding myself, but now. Naruto released a weary sigh as he stood before the window, staring at the night sky. He was still having trouble coming to terms with what had happened to Yami. Yami had been easy to understand back in the elemental nations. As the embodiment of Naruto's own sorrowful emotions, Naruto understood him better than anyone ever could. But now that Yami had absorbed the hatred from this world, Naruto could no longer understand him. What was his motivation for doing all this? Why did he join the Chaos Brigade? Did he really just want to see the world burn? Or was there some deeper meaning to it? Naruto didn't know the answers to any of these questions. That worried him. It worried him a lot. Someone is coming. It's just Irina. Naruto closed down his connection with Kurama as soft footsteps approached him. He didn't turn around. Instead, he watched Irina as she walked up to him by her reflection in the window. Something up, Irina? No, I was just coming down for a glass of water when I saw you sitting here. Are you having trouble sleeping? I am. Naruto sighed. I can't sleep when I know someone I love is in danger. Irina nodded, bit her lip, and then slowly moved closer. She eventually disappeared from his view, with only the top of her head visible in the window's reflection, and leaned her forehead against his back. The contact was warm. He could feel her warmth touch his back and spread further. Naruto was just about to comment, but then, in a fit of boldness, Irina pressed her entire body to his back. Naruto stiffened when her breasts squished into his back. Their size might not have been comparable to Rias, but that was like comparing watermelons to cantaloupes. In either event, with her body up against his like this, Naruto became keenly aware of just how gorgeous and fit this woman was. I know you must be incredibly worried right now. I won't tell you not to worry, so instead, I'd like to ask that you lean on me for support. You need to rest. If you can't, then, why don't you sleep with me? Maybe it will help. A part of Naruto wanted to ask if she'd really just suggested they sleep together, which was a bold suggestion coming from this reincarnated angel who'd only slept in the same bed with him once. Had their relationship moved to the stage where she felt comfortable asking this? While the desire was there, Naruto was not so crass that he'd ask a woman if she really meant what she'd said. No, he was just going to go with the flow here. He opened his mouth. Now hold on just a minute, skank. Naruto already slept with you before we left for this mission. If anyone is sleeping with him tonight, it's me. A voice interrupted them. The source of the voice was Kaneko, who stood on the second floor of the staircase leading up to the rooms they had been given for the duration of their time there. She was dressed in simple white cotton panties and a white t-shirt that slid off one shoulder. She wasn't wearing shoes or socks. Her bare feet were planted firmly on the ground, legs spread shoulder-width apart as she glared down at Irina. Kaneko, I thought you were asleep and wait. Did you just call me a skank? Damn right I did. You of all people have absolutely no right to call me that. Kaneko ignored Irina's snappy comeback, leapt from the stairs, and tried to shove Irina off him. But of course, Irina was not going to let go just because someone tried to remove her. If anything, she clung to Naruto even tighter than before, which caused his ribs to produce an ominous creaking noise. Girls, let's not argue, Naruto grunted. We're not arguing, Kaneko interjected. I'm just removing a leech. Oh, you did not just call me a leech. I did. What you gonna do about it? That does it. I'm not handing Naruto over to you. You two have had sex, like, every night since Rias left. Let me sleep with him. Not on your life. It was not long before Naruto found a gorgeous angel pressed against his back and an equally gorgeous catgirl hugging him from the front. The fact that both of them were only wearing very loose clothing just made this entire situation more stimulating. Actually, he was pretty sure he could feel Kaniko's nipples poking through the fabric of her shirt. They were pretty hard at this point. And now that he thought about it, Irina's were also a little stiff, perhaps from rubbing against his back so much. As if the situation had not degraded enough, then before Naruto could just suggest they all sleep together, Revel wandered onto the staircase. The ends of her elegant nightgown swished around her ankles as she rubbed her eyes. It looked like she had been asleep, as her eyes were still half closed. "Kaniko, what are you doing? Come back to bed." There was a long, pronounced pause as Revel stared at Kaniko, then Irina, then him, and then back to Kaniko. She did this several times. The longer the silence continued, the more Naruto began to sweat. He hoped to all the gods, the Satans, and whoever else was listening that she didn't try to make this situation worse by demanding he sleep with her too. "Are you two fighting over who gets to sleep with Naruto-sama? Really?" Revel placed her hands on her hips. "Do you not understand that he is going through a tough time right now? How can you two argue like this when he is suffering?" Perhaps it was her words, perhaps it was her tone, but something about what she said got through to the pair. Looking ashamed of themselves, the two girls separated from Naruto. As he heaved a sigh of relief, both girls bowed their heads, hiding their contrite faces. "We're sorry," they said in unison. "It's fine, I guess," Naruto muttered. Revel gave him a stern look. "No, Naruto-sama, it is not fine. While it is perfectly acceptable and even fun to argue like this, there is a time and place for such things. They should have known that right now is neither the time nor the place." Her words caused Kaniko and Irina to shrink even further on themselves, which struck Naruto as funny. Revel was almost always the one on the receiving end of Kaniko's teasing. She never seemed to gain the upper hand no matter how many times they battled with witty banter. Yet at the moment, it was clearly Revel who had the advantage here, or perhaps he should call it the moral high ground. Either way, she was definitely in charge. "Now," Revel said as she walked over and hugged Naruto's arm. "Since the two of you cannot decide who gets to sleep with him, I'm going to suggest we all sleep with him. I think that is fair, is it not?" "Yes," the two girls muttered morosely. They had clearly been hoping to have him to themselves. "Then let's go," Revel ordered. Still hugging his arm, Revel led Naruto up the stairs and down the hall, her strides confident. Kaniko and Irina followed a little behind them. As they walked, Naruto leaned down and whispered into Revel's ear. "Thanks for the save." Revel gave him a half smile. "Anytime."